Good evening, everyone. If we would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence afterwards. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome to the December 5th Planning and Zoning meeting. If I could have attendance roll call from my left, please.
Good evening and thank you for coming. I'm Brian Collegian.
Nancy Austin.
John Grant.
Jim Quish. Carl S. Moore.
Tom Nickel.
Tom Panzella.
And I'm Board Chair Scott Marlowe, and we're joined by David Solkis, City Planner, and Meg Green, Board Secretary. Before we get started, there's a couple items. I'd entertain a motion to reorder the agenda. 13 Sailors Lane, the presenter will be a little late and has requested that he be put last. So it would be after Raton Drive.
I'd make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion passes. The other item will be item 7, 328 Meadowside Road will not be discussed tonight. We're pending receipt of information requested by the board from our traffic consultant, so that will not be discussed tonight. Under new business is public hearings. So the first item is 54 Cooper Avenue, R5, petition of Jeff Adelino, agent for site plan and CAM for new single-family home on map 22, block 459, parcel 15C, of which Carmen Stefano is the owner. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Ron Durilio. I'm the architect on the project. The applicant is in the back row. So we're here because the house is within 25 feet of the high water line, the proposed house. This was a site that previously had a house on it, and it was raised after damage from Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Sandy. The construction will be limited to a site which was already developed and should have no adverse impacts on the surrounding properties or the coastal resources. The proposed new structure is placed approximately where the old house was. I do have aerial photograph if you want to see where that is, but it's basically in the same spot, in line with all the other houses on the street. On site we have rain barrels, which will collect the water runoff from the house. And we already went through wetlands, so we got our approval for that. The first floor living space will be elevated above the flood elevation, AE11. So our first floor elevation will be 14.3. The lower level will be built to flood standards. There will be 6 smart vents. There's overhead doors on the front and the back, and the water should freely flow right through the house. The lower level is only used for parking and storage and a stair to get upstairs. There will be we're proposing a concrete driveway apron. There currently is not one. We will also be adding two parking spaces in the house, in the garage, and then 2 more outside the house. On the rear of the house is a 1-story deck that's also above the flood elevation. You should have the architectural drawings, and I do have pictures of the site if you want to see them. That's about all I have for you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Solkis.
The applicant proposes to construct a new elevated single-family home with 3 finished floors and a building height of 34 feet 6 inches. The city engineer has multiple comments. The report was attached to the staff report, which can be addressed as a condition of approval. The site of a previously existing dwelling, the proposed new dwelling does not appear to pose an adverse impact on coastal resources.
Thank you. Are there questions from board members? Yes, Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, on a site survey, it appears that there was probably 12 to 15 loads of dirty sand placed on that lot. Is that going to be removed?
I believe so. Maybe the contractor can answer. Jeff Adelino is the contractor on the project. He could probably answer that question.
How are you? Jeff Adelino, 5 Mill Pond Close. Yes, the sand will be removed from that site. There was some previous material left on that site from the demo of the dwelling, so we're going to take all
Now,
that.
this is clearly about
Yeah,
15
sand,
dump
yeah.
truck loads of dirty sand that was placed on that lot.
Correct, that's all leaving.
And it's all going to be removed.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Are there other questions from board members? All right, seeing none, this is a public hearing. So at this time, thank you, I would ask the publics to speak. If anyone is in favor of this project, if they would come forward, state your name and address, and keep your comments limited to about 3 minutes, and make all your comments addressed to the board. Anyone in favor? All right, seeing none, at this time I would invite anyone that is against this proposal, again, to come forward, state your name and address, keep your comments to about 3 minutes, and address all your comments to the board. Again, anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, I would like to close this public hearing and ask for a motion on this item.
I move to approve the application as submitted, along with the 8 items by the city engineer and outlined in his 14 November 2017 memo.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Nichols. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right,
Chair?
yes, Mr. Solkis.
There are comments from the city engineer that are more clarification things that are not included in that list of 8. So I would just condition the motion on the approval on the city engineer being satisfied with all of the points of his letter dated specifically November 14th being addressed.
Mr. Grant, would you amend your motion?
I'll amend it as per recommended by Mr. Solkis.
Mr. Nichols, will you second that amended?
I'll
motion?
second it.
All right. Any questions on the amended motion? All right, seeing none, we'll take a vote. Mr. Collegian?
I'm with the motion.
Ms. Austin?
With the motion.
Mr. Dolan?
With the motion.
Mr. Grant?
With the motion.
Mr. Quish?
With the motion.
Mr. Moore?
With the motion.
With the motion.
Mr. Panzello?
With the motion.
And I am with the motion. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item of business is item 3, 553 West Avenue. And I am, as I have on this particular item, because of my affiliation with the owner of the property, I'm going to recuse myself from this. So Mr. Quish will act as chairman.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Again, for the record, my name is Thomas Lynch. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Lynch, Trimbicki, and Boynton, and my office is located here in Milford at 63 Cherry Street. And as I have throughout the handling of this application for the last 3 or 4 months, I'm here tonight representing Grillo Services, LLC, and its principals, L.J. Grillo and Michael Grillo, who are seated with me tonight. And this is an application that's being presented under the provisions of Section 830G that allow an applicant to come back before the board after either a denial of a previous application or an approval of an application with conditions and defined specifically under the statute. And I made a copy of the statute in my handout that was given to you, reading from the statute. Conditions that have a substantial adverse impact on the viability of the development. And as you all know, in October of this year, you approved my client's application for the development of a 342-unit residential complex on the property at 553 West Avenue. But you had a series of conditions, and most of them my clients didn't have a problem with. But we did have a problem with one condition, and that was the condition that prescribed that the project had to have 40% of the units set aside to be rented to tenants that meet the either 60% or 80% income guidelines as set forth in our statute. And I'm bringing this application back to you tonight, and I'm going to spend some time going through case law and talking about the law. Something that I really don't want to spend a lot of time on because I like to stand here and make presentations to you showing buildings and sites rather than talking about the law. But in this instance, I have to do that because an appeal of your approval to Superior Court can be held up for a period of time to allow us to come back before you, make an argument, asking that you remove the condition that you imposed in this case. And I'm going to go through a series of case law that address the issue. I'm going to be making reference specifically to the statute. And we have come back under the statute with a modification of our original plan, which set aside 30% of the units in this development, which is the number that's set in the statute. And that number was 103. And we're proposing to raise the number of affordable units from 103 to 108. Your approval conditioned that 34 additional units be set aside and rented to individuals meeting the affordable income standards. And I submit to you that that does have a substantial adverse impact on the viability of this project. And when members of the public come up to the podium and they talk about developers being greedy and they want to overdevelop land utilizing this statute, the statute does talk about viability of the project. In any real estate transaction, any deal, any business deal has a bottom line to it. And one of the conditions, just for example, that you did impose that my clients have agreed to go along with was the imposition of traffic signals at the exit 35 ramps off of Interstate 95. Now, you did that even though our traffic expert felt that it was not necessary. Our traffic expert said that striping the lanes and creating turn lanes at that intersection would be sufficient to handle any additional traffic emanating from this property. But you chose to go along with recommendations that were given to you from the traffic division of the Milford Police Department, saying that a substantial improvement to the area would be seen if there were traffic signals put there. Well, that's fine. But those traffic signals carry a price tag of approximately $750,000. That's one condition that you imposed. There were also other conditions that were imposed by the Inland Wetlands Agency in terms of the development of this site. Very expensive infrastructure improvements that are part of the plans that were approved. So to have 34 units additional taken from the rent rolls and rented at the affordable rate, which basically across the board, whether they're 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, or 3 bedrooms, across the board have an average rental difference of $500 a month. So, quite bluntly, by imposing a condition that 34 additional units be set aside for affordable renters, that results in a loss of rental income on this project of $17,000 per month, over $200,000 a year. I submit to you that that does have a substantial negative impact on the viability of the project. And that's what the statute says, and I made a copy of the statute so that you can see it. But going beyond the viability argument, quite bluntly, you're not permitted by law to do what you did. The Planning and Zoning Commission of this town, or planning and zoning boards across the state of Connecticut, have powers that are given to it by Section 8 of our general statutes. And it's very specific. Planning and zoning boards have the power to entertain applications to subdivide land. You have the power to listen to applications for special permits and special exceptions. You have the power to set your own regulations. You also have the power to create a comprehensive plan of development to provide for the orderly land use and the land development in the town. But one of the things that you don't have the power to do is to change a statutory provision that specifically sets, in this case, the number of units that are to be set aside in an affordable project. Section 830G6 of the statute provides that 30% of the units be set aside in a development to be rented to those individuals who meet the income guidelines, and the Planning and Zoning Commission does not have the power to alter that. So I submit to you, forget about the viability argument. You quite bluntly don't have the power under the law to do that. And I've given you a handout, and I'm leaving this with you. I'm going to ask you to seek counsel from your town attorney. I've already spoken to the city attorney's office. They're well aware of what I've done here tonight filing this application, and I'm sure that they would like to avoid another appeal to court that's going to end up with a negative result for the town. I attached to my handout 2 cases that specifically address this issue. The first case that I attached was the case Indian River Associates versus the North Branford Planning and Zoning Commission. It was a 1992 case that was actually authored. The opinion was authored by Judge Marshall Berger, who is now the Chief Judge of Connecticut's Land Use Court. So an appeal of this case to court is going to end up in the lap of Judge Berger. And what I've done is handed to you tonight an opinion that Judge Berger wrote in this case, and I'm asking you to just briefly turn, if you look at the pages that are set forth in the upper right corner, if you turn to page 9 of the handout that I gave you, in this particular case in North Branford, back in the early 90s, the statutory provision was that 20% of the units be set aside for affordable tenants for a period of 20 years. A subsequent amendment of the statute raised that number up so that 30% now have to be set aside for affordable tenants, and the period of time that the property has to be restricted is now 40 years. So I'm going to be reading from this case, and it talks about a 20-year limitation and 20%, but that's what it was at that time. It's been amended, so it's now 30 and 40. But specifically reading from the decision, one of the conditions that the North Branford Planning and Zoning Board did, or one of the reasons that they denied the application that was brought before it, was that they wanted to have the applicant raise the number of affordable units from 20% to 50%. Judge Berger, in commenting on that, stated as follows. He says, finally, the application was denied because the proposal restricted the affordable units to 20% of the total units and for the 20-year limitation. Such a restriction conforms to the statutory definition of affordable housing development. The Commission requested the affordable percentage be 50% and the set-aside period be for perpetuity. This, the Commission stated, would not only provide for a more desirable regulation, but would also, quote, alleviate the town losing any of its affordable housing stock inventory to fair market units, end quote. While this court does not necessarily disagree with either of these reasons, it cannot sanction them. This court does not interpret the statute as allowing a commission to impose more stringent percentages or longer set-aside periods. If the town believed the act should have different requirements, it may take that up with the legislature. An applicant need only propose a project with, quote, not less than 20% of the units, quote, for at least 20 years. It may choose to set aside more units for a longer period, but it may not be ordered to do so as a condition for approval. An applicant in a town could enter into a contract for a longer period pursuant to Section 82GA, but that provision is not applicable in this case. Therefore, reason 4F, the reason that the North Branford Planning and Zoning Commission gave for their denial, does not stand. I attached also another case, Griswold Hills, Newington versus the Newington Town Planning and Zoning Commission. I'm not going to read from that, but it was the same factual situation. In its decision, the town approved the project, but increased the number of affordable units, again from 20% to 50%. The court ruled the commission did not have the statutory authority to do so, and thus that condition had to fail. So I'm leaving that to you for your discussions. Attach the statute. The statute provides that a decision must be rendered by you within 65 days of the filing of our modification. The modification was filed on October 17th, I believe it was. I counted the days. The 65-day period runs out on the 23rd, the 21st of December. Your next meeting is the 19th, so that there is sufficient time for you to seek an opinion from the town attorney, and I'd ask that you do so. And if you have any questions relative to this, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, Mr. Sulkus, could you?
When Mr. Lynch brought this application to our office, I immediately got together with City Attorney John Burcham to go over what was being asked for and the case law. And I will tell you that Attorney Burcham corroborated everything that Mr. Lynch just said regarding the statutory powers that the board has and doesn't have. And in this case, he did agree that the board did not have the ability to ask for more than 30%.
Thank you. It is my understanding that this is an extension of the public hearing, so the public will be invited to speak. Please, when you come to the podium, state your name and your address. Please limit your comments to the change in what was approved at the previous meeting and what's being presented now. Other information that is not directly related to that is not part of what this hearing is open for. So if anyone is in favor of this, please come up. If anyone is against this proposal, please come up to the podium. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion from the board? If not, I would entertain a motion.
make a motion to accept the revised of adding from 103 to 108 units as per recommendations and hearing from the city attorney that we don't have the authority to push it further.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other comments from the board? One thing that I'd like to say is that these 830G applications come and go, and they're always contentious. And the public has been strongly and emotionally against most of them. And I just hope that you understand we are constrained by the rule of law, and the state statute puts us in a particular position that we are not allowed to go beyond what our edict is. We've heard from the city attorney through Mr. Sulkus, and although it may be disappointing to many people here, I feel that there's really no choice for the board. So I'd call for a vote. Ms. Klegian?
I'm with the motion.
With the motion.
With the motion.
With the motion.
I'm with the motion.
With the motion.
With the motion.
With the motion.
Motion carries.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 0 Shellen Street, HDD District, petition of Kevin Crusaden for a special permit and site plan review for outside storage and auto repossession yard on map 51, block 936, parcel 17K, of which Jordan Realty LLC is the owner. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kevin Crusaden with the law firm of Carroll, Crusaden & Moore, located at 3 Lafayette Street here in Milford. I'm here tonight with Jeff Gordon from Codespodian Associates, who's going to talk about some of the designs of this project. Also with me is the applicant, Frank Fournier, and his operations manager, Christopher Mann. You may hear from them. They have a lot of good insight into how this business operates. They have several locations in Connecticut. I first would point out that we have several approvals from administrative agencies. We have sewer approval, we have fire department approval, police department approval. The engineer, I think, recommended approval or said that he wouldn't be, city engineer wouldn't be against the project if certain conditions were applied, one of them being sidewalks, and another one had to do with drainage, and Jeff Gordon will address the drainage, and I'll address the sidewalks in a few minutes. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to review the statement of use that was submitted with the application. I tried to keep it simple and brief into one page. A few things that I would add to it is that, or emphasize if it's not already actually written down in there, is this use is 100% or 99.9% auto repossession of late model cars. That's significant, I think, when we start talking about the engineer's comments for drainage and maybe some comments Mr. Sulkus may have. I'm not sure if he still has any comments with respect to that. So the business, or the proposal is a building on what's currently a vacant lot known as 0 Shellen Street. The building will be approximately 2,400 square feet. I'll show you some elevations of it. They are in the plans as well. It's a pre-finished metal building. It'll be barn red with a gable roof. Adjacent to the building are 2 proposed storage containers. The use for those storage containers, as explained to me by Mr. Fournier, is for personal belongings that are left in the automobiles after a certain number of days. They operate under strict state and federal guidelines for collection actions. They have to keep things separate and keep things locked up. I think that on the staff memo from Mr. Sulkus, there was a comment about outside storage containers only being allowed for 90 days. We respectfully disagree with that because outside storage is an allowed use in this zone by special permit. So if you look at the zoning regulation, it's actually industrial district. This being the Housatonic Design District references the industrial district and says that any use that's allowed in that zone is allowed here under the following conditions. And one of the conditions, that's how we're allowed to come before you tonight for this application in this zone, is because outside storage is allowed in an industrial district. Earlier this year, this board, maybe not all the members of the board that are presently sitting now were here, but this board approved an application down the street at Shellen Street, which was the correct approval. It was along the lines of an outside storage. It was more for, and I have a copy of that approval that I'll give to you for several different reasons. So, let me talk about the subdivision, original subdivision approval for a minute as it relates to the sidewalk issue. When this was originally approved, and oh gosh, it goes back to 1998, the board at the time did not require sidewalks. I went through the minutes. A month or two later, there was a clarification memo between Bruce Kolwitz and then city engineer John Casey that said, oh, yeah, we meant sidewalks were supposed to be included as part of this subdivision. And so at one of the next meetings, the Planning and Zoning Board decided to vote in favor of adding sidewalks to the approval, which I think that's an illegal action. I don't want to get into too much of the legalities of it. I'm sure you've heard enough already tonight from myself, and you'll hear from other attorneys as well. But to approve something after the fact, when the application's no longer in front of the board, I don't think that was an appropriate action. The bond referenced sidewalks with a question mark. Actually, I have a copy of it here, and I'll give 2 or 3 copies to the board. I didn't want to have to print out 11 copies of it. But it says that are sidewalks required, question mark. The reason I'm going into this length of sidewalks is because sidewalks are expensive, and just like Attorney Lynch's comments about site development and the development costs, when you start adding on all the costs imposed by the various municipalities, regulations, and city agencies, and state regulations, projects become cost prohibitive. The reference to the project down the street that was approved in January of this year, no sidewalks were required. I don't believe a payment to the sidewalk fund was required either. So I'm going to submit a couple of copies of that information on that application, the previous application, just so you can see that it wasn't required as part of the subdivision, and it also wasn't required, or it also wasn't required as part of the application that was approved by this board about a year ago. Additionally, I have about 25 photographs of an existing location operated by the same companies and the same individuals. It's in Plainfield. It shows, so this, they said, will be roughly similar to what they're proposing here. And if I can just step up and hand these to the board. So the photographs depict operations in Plainfield, various parts of it, the offices. The request tonight is for 2 offices in one building, and that's because it's actually, there'll be 2 separate companies operating out of there doing the exact same thing, but for different financing companies. I believe the statement of use addresses the number of employees, total of 4 office employees, 6 drivers, company vehicles, 1 flatbed, and 4 wreckers, 2 of which the employees take them home, 2 spotter cars and 1 grid car with a camera. Those are all sedans. I believe we meet all the parking requirements. And I'll have Mr. Gordon address the drainage issues, but I'm available for questions now. If the board doesn't have them, I can throw up the same pictures on the screen so the public can see those pictures as well. Pending your questions, I'll turn it over to Mr. Gordon.
Are there any questions for Mr. Crusade? Yes, Mr. Nickel.
Yeah, on that, one of these pictures here, inside the garage, you proposing floor drains at all? Because I see a lot of gasoline, oil cans laying all over the place.
I don't think, I'll have Mr. Gordon answer that specifically, but I don't think floor drains are proposed. Jeff?
One other question.
Yep.
Fire suppression system in that building?
You mean like a sprinkler system?
Yeah.
Okay. That's not, I don't think that's part of the building, and the fire department didn't recommend that. The fire department approved the plans as they were submitted. Yep.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. My name is Jeffrey Gordon. I'm with Cotis Bodie and Associates, doing business 263, the Boston Post Road in Orange. Mr. Chairman, do you want me to have this facing the audience or facing the Commission? I have a couple of more sheets here than they're going to have there, but when I get to that, I can turn it around. Let me just move this on the other side. Just to address the situation about the drainage, we designed the Tower Heights subdivision for Jordan Realty back in 1998, and there was an industrial component. There was also a residential component up on Harvest, Partridge, in that area. And what that did is it created an open space subdivision where there was an open space buffer that is actually along the whole bottom of the sheet over here. So we abut up to that. And what also was happening at that time is we designed the drainage system for the entire subdivision. All the road drains, we figured out the amount of impervious that would be built at a high level under the zoning regulations at that time, and a retention pond and water quality structures were installed as part of the subdivision itself. So individual lots would not necessarily be required to have that. But in deference to our conversations with Mr. Podluski, he asked for additional water quality facilities, and on sheet SP2, you'll see that we have small ponds with biofiltration at either side along the streetscape, so we could create an additional cleansing of the water as it would enter into the drainage system. The largest pond is actually built next to the power plant, and there's a secondary pond that's built to the UI laydown area. So these things were all implemented as part of the overall master plan of the subdivision as it was constructed. Now the parcel itself is 1.72 acres. It's a 1 acre zone, and the plan, again, we have a, again, this is the building that we're talking about right here. It is kind of split down the middle. We have a fence right down the middle. Here are the storage containers. And the plan is to, having a metal building, and I can give you a copy of the actual color sheet. The building is going to be barn red, and the containers, which would be on either side, could be painted to match that. It's basically the same kind of metal that you have on the building there, so it would look like it's part of the building itself. But this is a pre-manufactured building, so therefore to add on to it like that as part of the building itself would be very, very costly. And this accomplishes exactly what is required by the state regulatory agencies and the owner itself. Again, the parking that we have on the site exceeds what's required. 10 spaces are required. We have 17. Again, we're trying to operate the business both sides. We do have a handicap parking space with a ramp that comes along the front of the building, and I'll get to the building shortly and show you that. In the meantime, I invite you to look at the landscape plan, which is sheet SP5. You don't have it. Okay, well. The landscape plan has 3 street trees along the front. We have a number of shade trees in the parking lot. Then we have a extensive planting along the back and the sides as well. The way the grades work out here, we have a modular block wall along the back end of the building there, which, even though this is open space to the bottom of the page, it does create an extensive screening along all sides of the site. There's also a lighting plan that was provided by RAB Lighting. That's on sheet SP6. And that shows the photometrics. Now, the area along the front is where we have what would be considered normal parking lot lighting, because that is an area where the public would have access, debtors coming to pick up cars, and the public would have access there. The back area, we have a lower level of lighting because that's a storage yard. It's not meant for public access. It's basically security and safety lighting there. Do you have the architecturals? Hopefully you can get the architecturals because it's a lot bigger than what I have here. The architecturals, you have a layout of the floor plan. Basically, we're showing 2 overhead doors that face the storage yard in the back. We have the handicap access ramp from the bottom of the sheet up. We have an entrance landing that is shared. We have a common lobby area with bathrooms, and then you have 1 office here, 1 office there, and then you have the separate garages for the 2 corporations that would occupy the building. Next sheet, please. Barn red, barn building, so it's kind of what the approach is. Again, you can see the overhead doors that face the rear of the property. We can see here from the side elevation how the grade changes in the front. Next sheet, please. And here you can see the handicap access ramp that would bring us into the building. So it's really a very basic building. It's a simple operation. And I think the comments that came from staff I can also hand out to you. I got 3 sets of just the lighting cut sheets as well. So again, as Attorney Crusaden mentioned, the various staff reports do cover all the salient points regarding drainage, Water Pollution Control Authority, police, and fire. So I don't have anything else to share with you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Thank you. Mr. Solkis, comments?
The applicant proposes to build an auto repossession and outside storage facility for 2 separate auto repossession companies. Located on either side of the proposed office building are 8 by 20 storage containers, which do not comply with Section 4.1.1.5 of our regulations, since storage containers are separately permitted for no longer than 3 months. They are not, by regulation, intended to be permanent. If the applicant needs extra storage space, it should be designed into the proposed building. The applicant has not provided a floor plan of the building per the requirements of Section 7.1.2, although we saw something tonight. Staff recommends approval conditioned on the following: remove the storage trailers and redesign the building to provide for the extra storage if needed, provide floor plans showing building layout and use of space, and satisfy the conditions and observations of the city engineer per his memo dated 10/23/17. And I'd just like to point out that outside storage is allowed in this zone, but outside storage is different from storage containers, and that's why they are called out separately in our regulations. The closest you can get is if you are a business that rents storage containers, yes, you can have a storage yard filled with the storage containers that are being rented out because they're not permanent fixtures. But other than that, storage containers are not allowed for more than 3 months. And the next question I'm going to get is, well, we see them around the city. If you see them, feel free to let us know because they're illegal, and when we go after them, they ultimately get removed.
Thank you. Are there questions from board members? Mr. Grant.
I have a question. The storage containers, what exactly is the purpose of them?
That's an excellent question, Mr. Grant. I'm going to have Mr. Fournier answer that. Frank? And then, if I may, after that, address Mr. Sulkis' comments?
Sure.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Frank Fournier, Skyline Recovery Service, Northampton, Mass. 376 East Stanton Road. We've been in business 22 years now. We actually have multiple locations in Connecticut. We have 2 in East Hartford, 1 out in Plainfield, Connecticut, and we also have 1 in Waterbury, Connecticut as well. Basically, the storage containers is to store personal property. When we repossess a vehicle, it comes in, we have to do inventory of it before it leaves for auction. We have to clean all the cars out, bag tag it, and by state law, we have to hold on to it for 60 days. So we have to hold on to all the property for 60 days, and we have to have it all stored, you know, locked up. So we've been using sea containers. I've been buying brand new sea containers, 8 by 20s. We build shelves and stuff inside there and store all the property.
Thank you. Mr. Crusaden, you wanted to address comments?
That's good. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's, you know, Mr. Sulkis and I agree to disagree fairly regularly on certain issues. So, but respectfully, storage container or outside storage is not defined in the regulations. Storage container is not defined in the regulations. By Mr. Sulkis' own admittance, if you were a storage container sales business, you could have as many storage containers as you wanted on the site. I think that outside storage and the storage containers, connexes, whatever you want to call them, are allowed in this zone, and they're allowed in the ID zone because they facilitate outside storage. The regulation that Mr. Sulkus is referring to is talking about if you're, and it's under the general bulk yard use regulation section, but it's in the context of it is if you have a damaged property and you need to temporarily store things, you can store them for up to 90 days in the storage container. So it doesn't disallow storage containers in the regulations. So I think it flows logically, honestly, that outside storage containers are allowed. However, if that's going to be an issue for the board, I'd ask that you keep this hearing open so that we can try to address that at another hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions from board members?
Actually, I have a comment. Have you checked with the building department? Because I believe storage containers, if they're left for a permanent thing, there would be considered an accessory structure, which would be actually covered under our zoning regulations and would have to have foundations and taken care of that way. So I believe basically the storage containers would have to be actually set up as a accessory structure.
I don't believe we've gone to the building department yet, Mr. Grant, with it. Typically, in some applications you would circulate it to the building department. In this one, I don't believe it was. I don't disagree with you that it would be an accessory structure, and if it's an accessory structure, I think we'd be able to meet the regulations with it. And I think that kind of falls under the zoning aspect of it. Right. So if it was required to be put on the slab, or a foundation, I don't think there would be an issue. The applicants also offered to side it or paint them the same color as the building. He's trying to work he's willing to work with the board.
Other questions from the board? Yes, Mr.
Sulkus, if the containers were set up as an accessory structure, would they then fall within the zoning regulations to be on that site?
As long as the building met the setbacks, and then as an accessory structure, we could properly tax it.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. With the business of repossession of automobiles, what are the actual hours that this operates? I mean, I'm assuming that business is not standard hours.
Right. I've had conversations with Mr. Fournier about that, but he's better able to answer that than I am.
The office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We actually take our last appointments at 4:30, but the cars do come in. We have agents working around the clock, day and night.
So there could be a tow truck coming at 2 o'clock in the morning to drop off a vehicle or something along those lines. And as far as the storage goes, or maybe even, what is the rest of that building intended for, those garages inside? I mean, you're not working on these cars.
No, we're not working on the cars at all, just our equipment and stuff.
Is it possible that you could create locked up storage within these buildings?
The problem is we can't have employees multiple, they got to be separate and locked where only, our yard guys can go to. We're state otherwise we're not in compliance with our finance companies if other people, get access to them.
Right.
It's got to be locked.
Yeah, I would assume, though, you could create a caged area that's locked inside the building.
I mean, we're building the building for space where we can park our trucks and stuff. I mean, we have multiple, bags and stuff and boxes. I mean, you'd be amazed if I showed you some of these pictures. These cars come in full. And there's a lot of property we store.
All right, thank you. Are there other questions from the board?
Mr. Chair. Through you to the applicant, do you anticipate, based on the number of vehicles that you're going to be repossessing, that you may outgrow your proposed storage container, and then there'll be more than one storage container on each side, or two or three.
I'll have Mr. Fournier come up just to be specific on it, or Mr. Mann, his operations manager.
My name is Christopher Mann. I'm from our 108 Commercial Drive in Plainfield office. The personal property is put in the storage containers, labeled, tagged, all that stuff. We only hold it for 60 days. The stuff is then removed and brought to another location. It's sorted out, donated, shredded, you know, whatever. The stuff does not stay there. We won't outgrow a single container because it doesn't stay in there for more than 60 days. So it just gets rotated out, you know what I mean?
So how many cars does each of the lots hold?
Are you talking the container, like, or the lot itself?
I'm talking about the parking lot. How many cars, if you were maxed out with your repossessions in the lot, how many cars is that?
The average lot can hold, most of our lots hold about 100 cars, you know, but they're rotating out, so they never really get to that max point. They don't, you know, they don't stay for more than 15 days at the max. A lot of cars leave right away if they're going to an auction right in Connecticut. State law allows them to leave.
So the cars might be going out, but you have to hold on to the possessions for 60 days. So you're going to have overlap. So you've got 100 cars there, but you might have the possessions of 200 cars there.
But the problem is possessions may be, I mean, what do you keep in your car? You could have a couple of pieces of paper, or a jacket. Maybe some people have car seats. There's not a ton of stuff all the time. It's very rare that you have a large amount of property. There could just be some CDs, a cell phone, you know, that doesn't take up much room at all. So in the grand scheme of things, the containers don't really ever get totally full because we're always rotating the property out. So we try to stay within the regulations. We don't hold it for more than, you know, 60 days, then we rotate it out. That way we don't get overfilled, you know. And same with the cars. The longest they usually sit on the lot is 15 days. After that, you know, the clients are moving these cars back to auctions.
Other questions? Yes, Mr. Panzella.
When the vehicles leave the facility, how do they get transported out? Do you have a, you know?
We don't transport them ourselves. The clients send out transporters. A lot of them are like 3-car truck and trailers, or some of them will be like a tractor trailer, like a car hauler. They'll come, load the car on, off they go.
That's usually between normal business hours.
Yeah, that all happens between the 9 to 5 time. That does not happen on the weekends and does not happen after hours. I've been in the industry I've been in the towing industry for 16 years. I'm in the repossession for 3, working for Frank Fournier. And like I said, all the lots run exactly the same hours, all that. And at night, it's 1 or 2 trucks coming in here or there. There's no personal property business done at night. There's nothing else. It's just dropping a car and going. Everything else is done between that 9 to 5 time.
Other questions? Thank you. Mr. Solkis, thoughts on this? I mean, if the storage trailers or boxes are going to be a necessity to this, should this be left open, even the public hearing part, until that's addressed?
Yeah, I mean, if the board thinks that the regulation 4.1.1.5 applies, and I believe it does, then you should give the applicant an opportunity to come up with an alternative, and the hearing should be left open because, you know, we haven't heard from the public yet, but whatever the alternative is, the public would then be able to comment on that as well.
I would entertain, well, to get the board's thoughts, I would suggest that we leave it open and let the applicant address the specific items, and then we come back, if that could be done next meeting. Yeah. Is that possible?
It's actually, Mr. Chairman, I mean, we're willing to agree that it's conditioned upon them being accessory uses. I think we meet all the regulations for an accessory structure for those. So we're willing right now to agree to that. So I don't know if it still requires the hearing to be left open. But if there's somebody here that would like to speak in favor or against, hopefully they get that opportunity tonight, rather than having to sit here for an hour and then come back 2 weeks from now. That would be my request.
All right. Mr. Solkis, thoughts?
We don't have a design, so we're taking a mobile trailer that is going to have to be made a permanent fixture. So I don't know what's involved with that. And I don't know what it's going to look like, and I don't think you do either. So I think it's up to the applicant to really show you what they're going to be doing.
Consensus from the board? Leave it open? All right, we're going to leave this open till, we'll leave it open till next meeting. If you feel you can come back with, I guess you have to submit plans to Mr. Solkis?
And to you.
Of course. So we'll leave this open for our next meeting. Do we need to take any other action on this right now?
Well, the public hearing is open, so they're...
Okay, well, I didn't know if we were going to just leave it open so that they could talk at the next meeting. We'll do it now?
I think it's...
Okay,
yeah.
That's fine. All right, so it is a public hearing, and even though we are going to address another issue on this, I would invite at this time any of the public that is in favor of this to step forward, state your name and address, address all your comments to the board, and if you would limit your comments to about 3 minutes. Again, anyone in favor? All right, seeing none, at this time I would ask anyone that is opposed to this proposal, if you would come forward, state your name and address, again, address all your comments to the board, and if you would keep your comments to about 3 minutes. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I just actually have a question and a comment. My name is Robin Moran. I live at 500 Plains Road. I'm curious, is this the same operator that's currently on Rattan Drive now? Because there's currently a repo company down there. You are. Are you closing up that operations and moving down? Okay. I guess I'd like to put it, if it's possible to put it on record. There's currently an ordinance. We have, a traffic situation. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. There's an ordinance for 14-49 for Plains Road restricting commercial traffic. Is it possible to put a request for the applicant to acknowledge this, and if possible, if they can put up a sign to direct all commercial traffic to use Bick Drive? Is that something in versus going Plains Road?
Mr. Solkis, I know this isn't a give and take, but that can be put into the record.
To the degree that we can't really compel an applicant to put any signage in the public right-of-way, only the Traffic Commission and Public Works can do that. You can make a recommendation to Traffic and Public Works. I don't believe that the Police Commission had any comments related to that, but maybe they were unaware of this request. So you can make the request and we can pass it on as a condition.
We can do that. We can make it a request.
Okay.
We'll make it a request.
Great. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak that is opposed to this? All right, seeing none, we're going to leave the public hearing open, and we will move on to the next item. Next item is item 5, 87 Golden Hill Street, MCDD, petition of Kevin Crusaden for a special permit and site plan review for 4 dwelling units on map 43, block 389, parcel 5, of which Bella Properties LLC is the owner. Good evening again.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kevin Crusaden. I'm an attorney with Carroll Crusaden and Moore at 3 Lafayette Street here in Milford. This application I'll try to keep as brief as possible. I do want to hand out some history of this property. The property's been blighted. It's been involved in litigation in the past, long prior to my client owning it. My client is here tonight. Mr. Jimmy Zico of Bella Properties LLC is here with me, and I'm going to hand these out to the board so I can talk about it. What I handed out is the history of the property. To put this as simply as possible, the site was previously approved or agreed upon to be 3 units in the main house, and that's the larger structure that's shown on the site plan. There's a carriage house that possibly in the rear of the property that backs up to, actually crosses the property line onto the state of Connecticut right-of-way for the railway. The carriage house probably, I think it might date back to 1847 because I looked at the old railroad maps and it was on there and it was from 1847. It's a very old structure. What we're really asking for tonight, because that previous approval expired, you can see that it was given to a Nicholas Baranowski. He never followed through with the agreement. The property that went into bankruptcy or foreclosure, my client ended up buying it from the bank. He's asking the board to approve the 3 units that were previously approved, and that expiration, that approval expired under that agreement. The previous owner didn't take care of it in the proper time frame. And to conditionally approve a 4th unit, which is on the 2nd floor of the carriage house, once we obtain a lease agreement with the state of Connecticut. I've been in contact with Kevin Waugh, his office is in New Haven, who is supposed to facilitate the lease of that space. If you look at the site plan, you can see the back part of the carriage house actually extends over the property line about, I don't know if it's 10 feet or 11 feet or whatever it is, but it's definitely over the property line. So without the lease, I think Mr. Sulkus would agree, if we had the lease agreement with the state of Connecticut, that 4th unit could be approved, conditioned upon that lease agreement staying in effect. Mr. Zico, I don't know if you've driven by the property, he's put a tremendous amount of effort and money into the property already. It's been painted. The interiors have been, the 3 units have been worked on. He actually has COs for 3 units in that building. The building department said those had never expired. There are a couple of comments from the city engineer, once again talking about sidewalks, and he's also talking about drainage. I would object or ask the board to not approve it conditioned upon the city engineer's comments for the following reason. Other than a fire escape, there's nothing that's been physically changed to the exterior of any of the structures. There's been no new construction. The asphalt that was there on site has been ripped up and gravel has been put down, which is, according to an engineer I spoke with, it slightly reduces the pervious surface by like 5% maybe. So the sidewalk issue is, there's sidewalks there. It's my understanding, at least according to the city engineer and the public works director, that the city can at any time make anybody either install sidewalks or replace sidewalks. They reference an ordinance. I looked it up a couple years ago. I don't really remember it. I don't really agree with it. I think it's arbitrary. I understand the city engineer's intent where they try to get sidewalks upgraded wherever they can. I think he's also asking for a concrete apron and a concrete curb. Those add construction costs. I don't have the exact cost of what that is. But that decision, I think the engineer defers to the Public Works Director. So I reached out to the Public Works Director today. I was not able to get in touch with him about what his opinion would be with requiring sidewalks. We'd ask that the board approve it as is because you know, there's been no new paving, there's been no new construction, and it's the same request for the drainage. The drainage on site is the drainage that's been there since the house was built in, you know, the mid-1800s. So that's this application, and we did receive approvals from Sewer and Public Works, which I think the Public Works comment, I wasn't able to get a copy of that yet, so I'm available for any questions, but that's essentially the application.
Thank you. Mr. Sulkus.
The applicant is currently rehabilitating the main house into a three-family dwelling according to a 2008 special exception. The applicant is proposing to add a fourth unit to be located on the second floor of the carriage house. If approved, the applicant would need to work out an arrangement with the state of Connecticut, since the carriage house appears to be partially on the state railroad right-of-way. The city engineer recommends that utility and storm drainage improvements be made. And then to answer Mr. Crusaden's question, the Public Works Director submitted a memo dated November 8th, 2017, where he agrees with the recommendations of the city engineer. Anytime we have significant new construction, rehabilitation, it's standard procedure for the city to have sidewalks and curbs and drainage be brought up to today's standards. So that's it.
All right, thank you. Are there questions from the board? All right, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Crusaden.
I just would like to say a comment. This is an ongoing issue for properties that are being rehabilitated, and it drives away businesses from making these moves because they come in, they just want to go into an existing, this is, as a side note, is an existing building, and then they're told they have to comply with the updated landscaping plan, lighting plan, and they're not changing anything to the exterior, they're just changing the use. In this particular situation, also nothing has changed. The use has not changed. We're just asking for an additional unit potentially if we can work it out with the state of Connecticut. So, you know, respectfully to the city and the Public Works Director, and I hadn't had a chance to talk to him obviously before that memo came out and explain my position on it, but I think it's overreaching in situations like this. I really think that they're putting the squeeze on property owners to put these sidewalks up. So, and I understand the intent. I'm not against sidewalks, but there's really nothing wrong with it other than it's old. So if this was new construction on a vacant lot, or if he was doing significant paving or adding another structure on the site, then I could see that that would apply. But in this case, I mean, it really puts a burden on small business owners. So I just submit that to the board. I see that problem over and over again. And if the board does see fit to include the engineer's recommendations as a condition of approval, I'd ask that you give my client a couple of years to comply with that, because there's been a significant amount of work, and there will be a significant amount of work taking care of or rehabilitating that old carriage house, which I think is a good thing for the city. So, thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, so at this time I would ask anyone that is in favor of this proposal to come forward, state your name and address, address all your comments to the board, and if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes. And anyone in favor? All right, seeing none, I would ask at this time anyone who is opposed to this proposal. Again, if you would come forward, state your name and address, address your comments to the board, and if you would limit your comments to about 3 minutes. Anyone opposed? All right, seeing none, at this time I think we'll close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion from the board. Yes, Mr. Dolan.
just have a question for Attorney Kasabian. Attorney Kasabian, I didn't get a chance to look at the plans. Can you just tell me briefly, where on Golden Hill Street is this?
It's across from Mr. Max.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know exactly where that is, and that building is blighted, and it looks terrible there. And if somebody is willing to come in there and fix it up and make it look nice, I think then that's probably in the best interest of the city. I think if it's a small business owner coming in there, I understand the city's intent with having the regulations about the sidewalks. But, I mean, it's just my feeling that if somebody's willing to come in and fix that up, it's in the best interest of the city. So I personally think that we should cut the developer a break on this one. If they want to, if the board feels that they need to comply with the sidewalk requirements and anything else recommended by the engineer's office, I would recommend 3 years for them to comply with it. Just because, especially in this situation, that building just looks awful there, and something needs to be done about it.
Mr. Dolan, is that in the form of a motion?
It's in the form of a motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion? Mr. Nickel.
Yeah, I agree with my fellow commissioners, except that I'd like to hear that the state of Connecticut approves this, because some of this is on their property before the applicant goes ahead with this.
Attorney Kasabian, the part about the state, the issue with the state about whether they're going to agree to this, can you shed some light on that? Have you talked to the state at all about that, or?
Yeah, I don't know if it's appropriate. I want to answer your question. I don't know if I can answer it through staff. If the public hearing's been closed.
In discussions I've had with Mr. Kasabian, I've been made aware that he has talked to the state about this. The state moves very slowly because Mr. Kasabian's client needs to get an agreement whereby they can utilize the carriage house, because it's may or may not, based on the surveys, it's not on their part of it is not on their property. So any approval you give tonight will also should be conditioned on getting approval from the state of Connecticut to actually rehabilitate the carriage house, since, you know, a chunk of it is on state property.
I think Mr. Grant had a recommendation.
No, my suggestion would be is to, since the motion did not include the carriage house, that the carriage house should basically not be approved at this time. Let the applicant come back once everything's in line with the state.
Mr. Dolan, would you?
That's fine. Can we add that to the motion?
Yes, we can.
All right.
Can the motion be
Yes,
restated?
we will. Mr. Nichols, I know you seconded the original motion.
I'll second it again.
Well, let me just restate the best I can here what the motion is that we have a motion on the table to approve the project, not including the carriage house until state approval is obtained, and that we are going to take the engineer's recommendations but give the applicant 3 years to complete those conditions. Is that?
That's accurate.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. I'd like to confirm that those conditions by the engineer, should that just, that 3-year timeline should just be for the sidewalks, not for the drainage and utilities?
I was going to make it for all the issues. I think it was all of them, not just the sidewalks.
Yeah, I believe that was the intent anyway from that. I think that, Mr. Dolan, your intent was that
it was more than just the sidewalks. I don't know if I articulated that in my ramblings, but that was the intent.
I think, yeah, the way we stated the motion was that the engineer's recommendations would be, we'd give the applicant 3 years to complete those. So there is a motion that's been seconded. Is there any other discussion on the motion? All right, at this time, we'll take a vote. Mr. Collegian?
I'm with the motion.
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 Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
You just want to ask, I know we have 100 Rattan coming up, and I know there's a chance that 13 Sailors Lane may be here.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to ask the audience to see if there's anyone from 13 Sailors Lane.
No one from 13 Sailors Lane.
Is the engineering firm for 13 Sailors Lane here? Yeah, they're here.
Okay.
Let me explain something. It's going to be a very brief item, and the reason why they were asked to go last originally was because they had another hearing in a different town, so we weren't sure when they were going to come here this evening. And I'm guessing, how many people in the audience are here for 13 Sailors Lane? We have 2 people. So I'm guessing, Mr. Chair, including the applicant, it will be rather quick, but that's up to you.
Well, I would ask the board for a motion. I would like to put Sailors Lane before Rattan Drive.
I'll make a motion to put Sailors Lane before 100 Rattan.
Second? All in favor? Okay. Before we do that, though, I've been asked that we need to take a technical break for 3 or 4 minutes. Thank you. If everyone would please take your seats. All right, we are on Sailors Lane, 13 Sailors Lane, R10 petition of William Kenny, agent for proposed boat ramp on map 11, block 17, parcel 2, of which David and Meg Peterson are the owners. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Bill Kenny. I'm the principal of William Kenny Associates, located in Fairfield, Connecticut. I am a registered landscape architect, a professional wetland scientist, and soil scientist. I'm here this evening on behalf of Dave Peterson, who would like to install a boat dock at his property at 13 Sailors Lane. Due to that, under section 7.2, it requires a special permit from your commission. The property is about a quarter acre in size. Sailors Lane is on the west side of town, and they abut the Housatonic River. They applied and obtained a permit from the Connecticut Deep for the boat dock. It includes a ramp up to a fixed pier and then a ramp back down to a floating dock. It extends over an area of salt marsh, and due to that reason, the fixed pier is elevated to allow for that marsh to continue to thrive. So they elevated it above so there's not a shading impact. And in addition to elevating it above the marsh, the decking is going to be an open grate decking to allow as much sunlight as possible to pass through. So they have their permit from DEEP. They've also been contacted by the Army Corps, and the Army Corps says that this activity is minor and as such falls under the general permit that the Corps has, and no further permitting is required with the Corps. We did submit the application documents that are required, and that included a site plan that we've included here. We also included a copy of the state permit. You can see Sailor's Lane is here. The property is L-shaped, and you have the existing house and then the dock that's proposed here. The coastal jurisdiction limit is in about that area. There's no other improvements proposed on the property associated with, there's no walkways, no landscape lighting or anything like that. And at the end of the dock, they're just putting a little 4x4 landing of stone or concrete to have the ramp touch down onto. That's pretty much the proposal before you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Solkis, comments?
The application is for the landward portion of a state of Connecticut approved dock. The landward portion of the dock is approximately 4 by 16. The planning and zoning review only applies to the landward portion of the dock. The proposal is in keeping with similar proposals for residential docks approved by the board.
Thank you, Mr. Solkis. Are there questions from board members to the applicant? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, so at this time I would invite anyone that is in favor of this proposal to step forward, state your name and address, address your comments to the board, and if you would limit your comments to about 3 minutes. Thank you. Anyone in favor? All right, seeing none, at this time, anyone that is opposed to this proposal, I would again ask you to step forward, state your name and address. If you would limit your comments to about 3 minutes and address all your comments to the board. Anyone that is opposed? All right, seeing none, are there any further questions from the board? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I would entertain a motion. Mr. Quick.
I'd make a motion to approve as submitted.
I'll second.
There's a motion that's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, at this time, I would ask for a vote on the motion. Mr. Collegian?
I'm with the motion.
Ms. Austin?
With the motion.
Mr. Dolan?
With the motion.
Mr. Grant?
With the motion.
Mr. Quish?
With the motion.
Mr. Moore?
With the motion.
Mr. Nickel?
With the motion.
Mr. Panzello?
With the motion.
And I am with the motion as well. The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item of business is item 6, 100 Raton Drive. Petition of Tribus Beer, Sean O'Neill, for his special exception for brewery with pub and patio on map 73, block 928, parcel 4Q, of which Best Buddies LLC is the owner. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and again, for the record, my name is Thomas Lynch. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Lynch, Trimbicki, and Boynton. My office is located here in Milford at 63 Cherry Street. And as I had stated last month, I'm excited, that's the term I'm going to use throughout this application. I'm excited to bring this application to you on behalf of my clients who are with me here tonight, Matt Weichner, Sebi D'Agostino, and Sean O'Neill, the principals of Tribus Beer Company. My clients have leased the property at 100 Raton Drive. They're actually in the building. They're starting the renovations of the building, constructing the brewery in the building. And what we're before you tonight is an application for a special exception to allow, in conjunction with the brewery, a tasting room and a patio on the exterior of the property. The property is located in the LI zone, so the manufacturing aspect of their business is a permitted use in the LI zone, but under Section 7.3 of our regulations, there is no specific delineation or definition of a tasting room or a beer garden or a pub area in the LI zone, and that's what brings us before you tonight with this application. But my clients are dedicated to starting their business here in Milford. They've generated a lot of excitement. They've gotten a lot of followers, as you see seated behind me here tonight, through social media, and they're really excited to get started with their business. So we're going to make a presentation to you tonight to go over the specific aspects of what's going to be done on the property. We are also going to head-on address some of the concerns that have come to our attention through discussions with neighbors, so that hopefully any of those concerns can be alleviated and addressed through the course of my presentation to you. So, a little bit of background. Rattan Drive is a it's a area of the sort of northwest corner of Milford, extended out on Plains Road. It's an industrial area. Behind it, further to the west towards the river, of course, is the new power plant. And it's an area that was zoned industrial back in the 1970s. If you've taken a ride out there, you know that there are a variety of uses on the property which are germane to an industrial zone. There's the dirt track facility as you first come in off of Rattan Drive. There's the soccer field, the soccer stadium on the other side of Rattan Drive. As was mentioned by one of the speakers that came up on the one of the last presentations, at the end of Rattan Drive, there's a large parcel of land that's being used as a storage area for automobiles. My clients have rented the property at 100 Rattan Drive, and we've submitted a site plan to you, and that is a 15,000 square foot building that was previously used by a fiber optic company that has moved out of the area, so that the owner of the property now has entered into a lease with my clients. The building is some 15,000 square feet in size. My clients are going to be utilizing approximately 11,000 square feet of the space, and a floor plan has been submitted to you as well that I'm going to go through shortly. But the building is going to be retrofitted to allow for a brewery and a pub area. We call it a tasting room. But if any of you are familiar with some of the other breweries that have developed in the area, such as Two Roads or the Hops Company up in Derby or Stony Creek out in Brantford, these facilities are real amenities to a town. I think things such as breweries and wineries add a real vitality to the town. It adds a diverse type of business to the town that brings people into Milford, and my clients, in conjunction with this, want to be active members of the Milford business community. I think one of the speakers that will be coming up after I speak will be a representative of the Economic Development Commission of the City of Milford, who will voice strong support for this project. But what my clients will be doing on this site, there really will be no construction on the property. The site plan that was given to you basically shows the building as it is. The proposal calls for, on the easterly side of the building, a small patio where in the spring, summer, and fall months that'll be utilized for persons to sit outside. There will be no music, there'll be no live entertainment out there. It'll just be an area for people to sit on the outside of the building. The parking lot over the course of the years has lost its stripings in terms of its spacing, so one of the provisions of the site plan is to provide for parking striping to upgrade the parking area. We have submitted this plan to you showing the number of parking spaces on the site. Based upon the use, 57 parking spaces are required for this particular use, and there are 65 spaces provided on site. So there's plenty of parking that'll be on site for persons coming in to visit the facility and to utilize the both coming in to buy produced beer on site or to stay and consume. Now, my clients did put together a statement of use that was submitted and made part of your package, and just going through some of the features of that. In terms of the licensing necessary for this, the state of Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection has a specific permit for breweries. It's a manufacturing permit that allows you to produce beer on site and then turn around and sell it to people to take it off-site in containers, or for people to consume it on-site as part of the tasting. And that's the permit that they are in the process of obtaining at this point prior to opening up the business. There's two aspects of the operation of the business in terms of the hours. The manufacturing of the beer is going to take place during their brewery manufacturing hours, which will be Monday and Tuesday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then Wednesday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. The business hours for the tasting room are going to be from Wednesday through Sunday, 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. Now, we want to stress in terms of the output of beer on the facility, and we're using Two Roads Brewery as a comparison, and you know, there's a large number of gallons and barrels that are produced by the facility at Two Roads. This is going to be much, much less than that. There's some 176,000 barrels, I believe, that are produced a month at Two Roads, and the production here is going to be 900. So comparing this facility to Two Roads, it's a much smaller production scale, it's a much smaller facility, and as such, we anticipate that persons coming onto the site and the traffic coming onto the site will be much less in accordance with those numbers. The company will also have the ability to serve wine and cider. This will accommodate gluten-free patrons. The patron area will have an extended 1,000 square foot outdoor beer patio, as I told you about, for on-premise consumption. The area will be closed during the winter months. Merchandise will be sold in the patron area, including branded glassware, apparel, and accessories. One other feature that we're showing on the site plan is a parking area next to the patio on the easterly side of the building for a food truck. Again, using Two Roads and the Hops Company as a comparison. There will be no facilities on this site for producing food, for cooking. There will be no kitchen facilities, so there will be space for a food truck to come onto the property, so that if people want to buy either pizza or sandwiches or whatever from the food truck, that'll be available, and that can be consumed on the premises as well. The layout of the interior sheet L1, which is part of your package, basically shows the renovations that are going to be made on the interior, and Salomon and Associates put together the engineering and the design work for this building. One of their representatives was to make an appearance here tonight, but they couldn't, so they did send basically a summary as to what the work is going to be done on the interior of the brewery. And basically, Sharon Sheehan, who's the senior design engineer, sent a letter in, and I think it's part of the file, just outlining the following features. First of all, the interior layout of the brewery is composed of both new and existing elements. Existing office and storage space will be reused, and additional storage space created within the new layout. The provision of toilet facilities includes new men and women's toilet rooms, as well as upgrading 2 existing toilet rooms with new fixtures and washroom accessories to comply with ADA accessibility standards and gender-neutral considerations. A janitor's closet and utility room have also been included in the layout as part of the functionality of the new brewery. The patron area is bounded by the bar and brew house counter. That's in the center of the plans as shown there, with a corridor which provides access to the toilet facilities. Egress is provided through multiple exits, including ADA compliant exits. The brew house equipment itself will be located in the employee-accessed brewery area. In addition to the interior space layout, our office also provided the plumbing and electrical designs in support of the new layout. Plumbing consists of the domestic water, sanitary, and vent piping and connections necessary for proper function of the new fixtures and equipment. The electrical design consists of electrical connections and panel boards for the proposed equipment. The design of the fire alarm system was limited to the proposed brewery space within the building. Emergency and egress lighting upgrades were also limited to the brewery portion of the building. The design also included upgrading the exterior site lighting. And we also want to note that the building is fully sprinklered, so that those plans, I believe, are shown on the fire alarm sheet, which, again, were made part of the plans submitted to you. There has come to our attention concerns of the neighbors about traffic. So I just want to touch base on how we're going to address that. First of all, deliveries to the brewery will come through Bick Drive and Shellick Road onto Plains Road and then to Rattan Drive. As we all know from going out into that area, and as the woman who came up to speak about the last application, there is a city ordinance, and it has been supported through signage over the last few years, limiting truck traffic coming from the Plains Road exit off of Interstate 95, coming out Plains Road. So there'll be no truck access to this property by way of Plains Road. Any deliveries that will come to the property will go through Bick Drive, go around the power plant, and come up Plains Road to Rattan Drive. Secondly, my clients are going to be developing a website, and in terms of directing patrons, not just the truck traffic, but also patrons to the facility, they will be setting a direction scheme on their website, again, directing people to the property by way of Bick Drive, Shelland, Plains Road, and Rattan. So again, to address the concern of some of the neighbors in the Plains Road and the Cornfield and Haystack area about any increase in traffic that may result from this development, you know, my first blush response is it's an industrial park. There's going to be traffic, and you know, addressing that, we've set the website and set the directions so that the traffic will come in the back end through Bick Drive, and we believe that that's going to substantially alleviate that concern. I'm going to go through the department reviews in just a minute, but one of the things my clients really wanted to stress in their application to you tonight is that they really want to become members of the Milford community. They want to become active members of the Milford Chamber of Commerce. You know, breweries, wineries, things of this nature tend to become very, very active participants in the town. They sponsor teams and recreation leagues. They become sponsors at the Irish Festival. They partake in the Devon Rotary Oktoberfest and the Oyster Festival. And these are all things that, again, create economic vitality in the town, and my clients really want to be part of that. And that's something that they've asked that I stress to you in the course of this presentation to you, and also to the public, that they are concerned about their presence in the area. They are concerned about addressing neighbors' concerns, and we feel that through some of these measures that we've undertaken, that that will be addressed. We're also concerned about comments that have been made about noise, and again, there'll be no outdoor music whatsoever on that outdoor patio. There's been some concerns raised about the smell coming from a brewery. The production is going to be completely maintained inside. There's a sophisticated ventilation system with these breweries that maintain keeping any smells from emanating from the building, so that you know, we really want to stress the fact that we've tried to make this application conducive and you know, really listening to concerns to the neighbors that we've spoken to over the last couple of months. So we also have a traffic report that's been prepared. I'm going to turn things over to Jay Koulis from CME Engineering. Jay is a traffic engineer who put together a report, I believe it's part of your package, talking about the effect of traffic coming in and out of this property based on this particular use and what effect this would have on traffic in the Plains Road area. So I'll have some concluding comments, but at this time I wanted to turn the presentation over to Mr. Koulis. Yep. What do you want to do this? Want to get a chair? Yeah, yeah. I'll move the chair. Or do you want to just sit right here? Yeah. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Thank you. Again, my name is Jay Koulis. I'm manager of traffic engineering services for CME Associates, 101 East River Drive in East Hartford. We were asked by Tribus to review traffic conditions related to this application. Excuse me. And generally, we prepared a letter dated July 17th, which summarized what we found. In general, we found that the proposed project would add 37 additional trips during the evening peak hour of traffic. We also reviewed sight lines from the site's 2 driveways, as well as sight lines at Plains Road, and found them to meet or exceed minimum requirements for the speeds on those roads. And based on those assumptions, we concluded that the proposed project would not have a significant impact on traffic in the area. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to conclude my comments just with a brief summary of the department reviews. First of all, obviously David's going to go through his administrative summary. There were just a couple of comments that I wanted to address with regard to that. As I said, there's 65 parking spaces that are provided on site, and based on the use, 57 are required. So there actually is an overage of some 8 spaces. It's some 11,000 square feet, I believe, that is going to be leased by my clients, leaving some 3,500 or 4,000 square feet in the building that's still left to be rented. It's my understanding, my clients have confirmed, the landlord has no intention of renting that space out. It's sort of storage space in the building. So we submit to you that the use that we're proposing utilizes 57 spaces, 65 are provided. In the event that there's some further use in that building, then the parking's going to would have to be addressed by that proposal. So again, just commenting on David's noting of that, we feel that the parking is certainly sufficient for our clients' use. The plans that were submitted show a lighting detail with a schematic, and David notes in his report that it lacks schematics with foundations and fixtures. My clients have reached an agreement with the United Illuminating Company, and to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't even know a program such as this existed, but there is a leasing program where UI will come in and install lighting fixtures in parking lots. They put the base down 3-4 feet below the surface so that it's completely secure. It's wired from pole to pole, and they are well aware of the town's lighting requirements and zoning requirements. So whatever additional lighting in the parking lot that is going to be proposed here, clearly a condition could be made of approval that those lighting plans or those lights have to submit to the lighting schematics of our zoning regulations. And David also had made reference to a landscaping plan, making reference to a landscaping of the back parking area. I think there may have been some misunderstanding on that. The parking as shown on the site plan is going to remain as it is. On the far easterly portion of the property, the landlord had cleared some of the hill going up. That's not going to be expanded for parking. I had spoken to David on the phone about this, and I think that there was some, I won't use the word misunderstanding. I think maybe there was an assumption that that was going to be an expansion of the parking area, which would trigger the parking landscaping requirements of the zoning regulations, and we're just submitting to you the parking is going to remain just as it is. That area is just being cleared out. There was a lastly, David made mention about the dumpster enclosure. My client had sent an email in response to that. So again, whatever requirements that either the building department or the zoning office want for the dumpster requirement, my clients will meet, and it can be made a condition of any approval. The plans were submitted to the police department. There was a report that was issued on October 3rd from the police commission. The proposal was reviewed. Sergeant Hemperly's report speaks for itself. The police department reviewed Mr. Corliss's traffic impact study. They also went to the site to look at the sight lines, and based on the above, it's the recommendation of the traffic division to approve the proposal as it is submitted. There were some minor comments that were generated by Greg Podleski, the city engineer. My clients will be removing and reinstalling new aprons at the entrances to the parking areas, so that will be done as set forth in the memo from the city engineer. So again, if that needs to be a condition of approval, my clients are fully capable and aware of that and are doing it. I will also note for the record there was a septic system that was servicing this property, and that's been abandoned, and my clients or the landlord have now hooked the building up to the city's wastewater management system, so the building is on the city sewer system. There was an approval that was issued by the Sewer Commission on October 4th, and again, that's part of your that's part of your package. And lastly, Fire Marshal Begley reviewed the plans and issued an approval on Wednesday, September 27th. The plans as submitted to the fire department meet their approval. All right? So that concludes our presentation. I think that, this is going to be a great addition to Milford. My clients are looking forward to getting going. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and fire away.
Thank you, Attorney Lynch.
Right.
Mr. Solkis, comments?
The application is presented to the board as a special exception as the applicant proposes a brewery in accordance with 3.10.1.1. However, also requests a tasting room and food service as a related use not specifically prohibited under 3.10.2.7. In accordance with the applicant's engineering report dated July 17, 2017, and statement of use, the applicant proposes to convert an existing 15,000 square foot industrial building into a brewery with an approximately 600 square foot indoor tasting room and 1,100 square foot exterior patio, with proposed food truck parking for a single food truck. The parking area is also expanded. The applicants propose to have live music and a sound system inside the facility. The applicants propose receiving 2 truck deliveries a day, but do not provide information on the output of the manufacturing of the beer and what kind of truck traffic that may generate. The parking calculations provided by the applicant of a maximum work shift of 5 employees, 5 spaces, and 52 spaces for customer parking based on 1 space per 50 square feet of customer floor area, which is 2,592 square feet, show a required parking total of 57 spaces. The applicant is providing 65 parking spaces in total, and the applicant is showing an excess of 8 parking spaces based on their use. The building contains a separate tenanted office space of 4,270 square feet, which requires an additional 18 parking spaces. The proposed use creates a parking deficit of 10 spaces for the entire property. The submitted plans lack lighting details such as schematics of light poles with foundations and fixtures per the requirements of Section 5.2. The plans lack a landscape plan per the requirements of 7.1.2.21 and 5.14.6, landscaping of the parking area. This would also include the lack of details for the rear parking lot hill regrading that goes from elevation, I said here 78 to elevation 84, but because Mr. Lynch brought this to my attention, thinking that this might be a miscommunication, it's actually 76, elevation 76 to 84. The dumpster enclosure, well, we know now does meet the requirements. They just have to provide 4-sided architectural elevations that weren't provided. When I wrote this report, it was about a month ago, so obviously some things have changed. I agree with Mr. Lynch that as a condition of approval, we could have detailed UI plans submitted to us, but they would have to be compliant with our regulations, and generally UI doesn't care about our regulations, so we'll have to look at that very carefully. They're aware of them, but their job is to light things as bright as they can, which often conflicts with our regulations. The area that Mr. Lynch thought that we had a miscommunication about was the rear portion of the parking lot, I would call it the southern rear portion, where the hillside is being regraded. So if it's being regraded to a degree where there should be a retaining wall, we would need to know that because of the elevation changes that take place there. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Are there questions from board members? Mr. Nichol.
This food truck, will it leave the premises every day or just remain on site and be replenished?
No, it comes in and out during the course of the day.
And what hours?
During the business hours that the brewery would be open.
And the Three Seasons patio, how will that be regulated between spring, summer, and fall, dated by the calendar, or?
Quite honestly, I think it would be by the conditions of the weather. If it's a nice day in April and it's 65 degrees out and they want to put the patio chairs out for people, you get days in April where it's 30 degrees.
So it's not Three Seasons, it's based on the weather?
Based on the weather, correct.
Are there other questions from the board? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
This is a public hearing, and I see quite a few people out here. So, at this time, I would ask anyone that is in favor of this proposal, if you would step forward, state your name and address, and if you would address all your comments to the board, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, other distinguished members of the Planning and Zoning Board. My name is Michael Finley, and I'm here tonight to testify on behalf of Brett Brosder, who is a Milford resident at 33 Railroad Avenue. And I'm here today to urge members of the board to approve a request from the Tribus Beer Company, seeking a special exception to establish a craft brewery with a patio pub at 100 Raton Drive, a rundown 15,000 square foot industrial warehouse that the job creating company is converting into an engine for economic growth. In a state that has been labeled anti-business over the past decade, it's time to right the ship and welcome new businesses with open arms and to improve our economic well-being. My message is simple. The craft brewery industry is booming across Connecticut, and Milford residents will finally be able to imbibe at a homegrown brew pub if Planning and Zoning Board members approve this job-creating neighborhood revitalization proposal from the Tribus Beer Company. Across Connecticut, craft breweries are growing, and there are virtually no signs of slowing down. In fact, the number of craft breweries has more than tripled over the past 5 years. The state currently has nearly 60 craft breweries up and running across the state, and around 40 more in the planning. Connecticut's craft beer boom is resulting in a nearly $569 million economic impact annually and the creation of more than 4,600 jobs and counting. The success of craft brew pubs in the Nutmeg State is more than about beer. It's also about serving as a gathering place, a source of local identity and pride, and as a means of turning rundown industrial properties into engines for economic growth and job creation. However, Milford is missing out on the benefits of housing a craft brewery. While cities and towns across the state experience the benefits of craft breweries, including our neighbors in Stratford and West Haven, Milford remains without. That's in part why the Tribus Beer Company's proposal is so important. It will serve as Milford's first craft brewery, creating local jobs, growing our economy, serving as a gathering place and a source of local pride, and turning around an old industrial property in an industrial area of our city. Stratford is a great example of a town that is benefiting from embracing craft beer. Two Roads Brewery took over an old vacated industrial property less than a decade ago. Following its multi-million-dollar renovation, today it's responsible for creating nearly 120 jobs, serving as the largest brewer in the state and still growing. The industrial area where Tribus Beer Company is located is ripe for the type of development spurred on by a new brewery. Their beers are internationally certified, and they'll be enjoyed in a taproom featuring a hand-furnished, 25-plus seated bar with views of industrial-style stainless steel tanks. This industrial element is noteworthy. The impressive industrial scale of the entire brewing operation and the jobs it creates is too often forgotten. Hundreds of gallons batches of beer are made by women and men who haul more than 100-pound kegs across a newly redone floor, and installing brewery equipment and retrofitting spaces required skilled craftsmen and laborers. Brewing is a capital-intensive industry that requires a lot of space, which makes craft breweries a great fit for turning around a rundown industrial property. And according to a research from a University of California professor, bars attached to breweries have much less crime than regular bars, making them far more family-friendly and pet-friendly alike. Whether it's Two Roads Brewery in Stratford, Thomas Hooker Brewery in Bloomfield, Thimble Island Brewery in Branford, or Lock City Brewery in Stamford, communities across the state are benefiting from the job-creating, neighborhood revitalizing, and positive community building impact of having a craft brewery. Milford residents deserve the same. That's why I hope you'll vote in favor of allowing Tribus Beer Company to give our community a craft brewery to call our own. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, how are you? Max Ludwig, 26 Blair Street. Just want to say, very excited to have the opportunity to see a brewery come to Milford. I myself have traveled throughout New England visiting breweries, really great people I've met along the way, really good crowds. Not a big fan of some of the other bars and restaurants where, you know, the lights get lower, the music gets louder as the night goes on, so this offers a much different environment, really fun place to hang out. And I've heard that these brewers come from New England Brewing, which is regularly regarded as one of the best breweries in Connecticut, so pretty sure they're going to be making a good product too, so just very excited to see them potentially get to start in Milford. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Chairman Marlowe, members of the board, my name is Greg Harla. I am the Vice Chair of the Economic Development Commission here in Milford, and I know in your package our letter did reach you, but I'd like to read it out loud tonight for public record. There's over 3,000 businesses in Milford that have a committed investment to our local economy, and that figure continues to grow. We are a city in support of job creation, economic sustained growth, business development, and innovation in Milford. In furthering our mission to assist our local business development, I write and support the agenda item, the petition of Tribus Beer, for the special exemption to allow for a brewery with a pub and a patio. The economic impact of the craft breweries is staggering. The Brewers Association estimates the economic impact for Connecticut will be over $718 million each year, employing thousands and providing a boost for tourism. The Connecticut craft brew economy has tripled over the past few years, and we are pleased that the Milford is now going to be part of this expensive industry. In response to the concerns, we believe that the current local and state regulatory landscape is responsive to any issues or concerns associated with the pub and the patio. The Economic Development Commission encourages small business growth, and we believe this exemption will allow for the enhancement of Milford, further attracting tourism and additional business development. We appreciate your advocacy on behalf of the business in Milford and urge you to approve this special exemption. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for your time tonight. My name is Fred Miller, and I live at 65 Henry Albert Drive, which is up in the neighborhood of where this establishment is going to be located. And I can tell you from my standpoint as a neighbor, I welcome them. I look forward to having them. As a 30-plus year resident of Milford, I think it very important that we continue to attract businesses of this type, small businesses that are the backbone of our community, and especially at a time where economically we're having some issues from Hartford on down which have affected us. So I think it's great that we have businesses like this, that we're attracting them, not only for the revenue that they'll bring into the city of Milford, but for the fact that when you look at a business like this, it does not put a great strain on our resources as, let's say, when we put in multiple housing units and things like that. It doesn't require schools, it doesn't require a lot of other resources that we would use for other types of buildings. So as one who can hear the bikes from my deck until they stop at 9 o'clock at night down by Oronoke Road, and it's not a complaint because I know it's kids having a good time and they're in a safe spot. But I have no fear, no apprehension whatsoever about a brewery. There's a dump down there, so I think if we had to worry about an odor, that would be more of an issue than a brewery. And I'm not worried about noise from indoor sound system. Most likely in the summer, the doors will be shut because the AC will be on because it'll be hot, as it always is. So from my standpoint, as a resident, as a local, as one who would be more affected by this, as one who runs, John knows that, quite a bit in the area, along Oronoke Road, around the dump, Bick Drive, etc. I don't see any issue with a bit of increase in traffic. I don't think it's going to be concentrated enough that it will affect us in a negative way. When you're talking 4 or 5 employees coming in, that's not a lot of cars. When you're talking people coming in to tasting, that's spread out over time. So you're not going to have this impact of all of a sudden 50, 60, 70 cars come rolling in. So from my standpoint, I just want to say I support it and I hope that you're able to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Bill McDonald. I live at 32 Elizabeth Street in Milford. I just have a simple statement in support of the application. I know the applicants are conscientious businessmen and sensitive to the concerns of surrounding neighbors. Problems could probably be worked out between the two parties. The applicants are part of a flowering microbrewery trend that is sweeping the nation. This proposal would bring distinction and a broader tax base to Milford as the city's first brewery. Please approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Eaton of 82 Loomis Street here in town. I am in the beverage business. I do have partnership in a distribution company that distributes craft beers and soft drinks. I did hear quickly of maybe the output, how the trucks come in and out. My facility particularly, we have a pretty large warehouse. We could hold quite a bit of beer, non-alc products as well, to come in to pick up if I were lucky enough to get this distributor in my portfolio, this beer in my portfolio. I wouldn't be coming in and out of the streets. I wouldn't be having trucks Monday through Friday. Typically morning, I like to get the guys on the road in and out. Buzz on the street, Milford could use this. I've been here for almost 16 years. I'm very excited. I would love to be able to spread what these fine young guys could take care of here in town. And it will put us on the map, and I do believe these guys will be doing some great things here. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Martin Kelly, 163 Beach Avenue. I want to speak in favor of this motion. I think the presentation was terrific. I think they address a lot of the concerns that we haven't heard them all yet, I suppose. On traffic has been addressed. I think this is great for Milford. And I also want to say that the young men who are heading this up are of great character, one of which I've known since he was 6 years old. So I vote in favor of this, and I hope you do as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? All right, seeing none, at this time I would invite anyone who is against this proposal to come forward, state your name and address, and if you would keep your comments to 3 minutes and address all your comments to the board, please. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Planning and Zoning Board and City Planner. My name is Vincent Cerullo Jr., and I reside at 45 Haystack Road here in Milford. Rayton Drive is directly behind my home. The street known as Rayton Drive is zoned LI 30, light industrial, and rightfully so, as it serves a buffer between HDD, which is heavy industrial zone, going beyond and going into Cornfield and Haystack Road, which, as you well know, is an R30 residential zone going towards the Housatonic River. Light industrial, or LI 30, is quite different from its lower neighbor of HDD, heavy industrial. Light industrial is smaller, quieter industrial zones. It is meant for smaller machine shops, office, storage space for vehicles, sheet metal shops, small repair facilities, warehousing, etc. Now, excuse me, this poses a question. Does a brewery fit in such a zone of LI 30? And the answer to that question is yes, it does, if it is held to a small scale, or what we know today as a microbrewery. This kind of business is perfect for an LI 30 zone, and it is good for the city of Milford, where businesses start up, become a success, pay its taxes, which helps our tax rate stay down, and it's something that we all want here in the city of Milford. This in itself is a good thing. Nothing prevents this type of business from entering this zone, and excuse me, I have a bad case of bronchitis today, so please bear with me, and remaining there during its life, and which is sometimes, as I would see, as for a good thing for the city of Milford. There are all kinds of businesses that I have worked hard to attract here while serving on this same board that you now serve on, where I served for 8 years, and some of them as its chairman. But here is where the applicant for a special exception and I must part company. This is not a zone for a pub or a patio. There are other zones made for this part of the application. While serving on the board, we set up downtown Milford just for this, and it has worked as we could see it as today, as we go around the green. Just look around and see the pubs, the restaurants that have grown here in the city of Milford. To put a pub and a patio in an industrial zone makes absolutely no practical sense whatsoever. This exception would be special and would set a precedent that could never be repaired later on in the future. I ask, is this what we want or what you want for the city of Milford? Let's look at the applicants and see, excuse me, see what they are and what's similar and different from what they're proposing here in Milford. The present establishment, their present establishment in Woodbridge sits in a business industrial zone. This is a far departure from an LI 30 zone that is part of the proposal and where it would be placed. In the picture here to my left, as you can see, is their front part of their building. You could see the entrance, you could see where they get their deliveries, and you could see basically the pub area. That is employee cars that are parked in front. In this particular picture, we see the side, actually side and back of their facility up in Woodbridge. Again, this is their parking for their employees. Okay, that's an air conditioning unit. And there's a large garage door in the center of the building there, which I will explain later on what it was used for at one particular point in time. This is the rear of their building in Woodbridge. As you can see, it's fenced off, it's separating the property behind it. This becomes very important, as I will point out momentarily. This is a picture through that particular fence. As you can see, it's a parking area, and behind it is a strip mall. And if you are aware of this particular mall off of exit 59 or the Parkway, in this particular mall there's Grimaldi's Italian Restaurant and Cat's Deli, if you are aware of those particular businesses. Getting back to the New England Brewery building, you'll notice on my next picture, you'll see the sign that says Jaguar. This original building was part of a car dealership. This is where the cars were repaired. Thus the large garage door on the back part of the facility. From Route 63, looking forward in, you could see the picture of New England Brewery. It is set behind, and my next picture, behind Crest Lincoln Mercury. It is behind and off the main road, not directly on the face of the street, such as we have on Rayton Drive. Two Roads Brewery, as the applicant has brought to our attention, it sits on a very large parcel of land. It is zoned for heavy industrial, which was the original use of the building. It has, okay, a large property area that has picnic and grass area. Down on Rayton Drive, you don't have this.
Excuse me, Mr. President, could we have a time limit on this, so if we could...
And you know what, I totally understand that, but I also have a presentation here, as they did. And,
I'm
may
sorry,
I finish,
sir.
Mr. Chairman? May I finish? I'm almost done. Okay? I think we also, as opponents of this project, have a right to present to you a full presentation.
You do have that right, but we'd like to keep it within a time period of 3 minutes, so...
I understand, and I'm almost done.
Thank you.
If you could please bear with me.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair? You should let the speaker also know that although we have the 3-minute time limit, he's more than welcome at the end to finish a presentation later on. We don't want him to think that we are denying him his right to
by no means
answer.
denying anything. I just want to let other people speak as well.
I understand. Okay. If you just, I'm almost done. Okay. There are similar businesses to what we see here in the proposal. There is one on State Street in Hamden that is very similar to what is being proposed. Except for the logo on the building, it is very plain building. There are no decks, okay? They do have a tasting area, but there are no decks outside. The one thing that you'll notice here with the application, I'm asking that you hold off on this tonight and go out and study the area in question. Look around the surrounding areas. If you look at the similar one that is sitting in Bridgeport, the one in Hamden, there are no residential areas. Two Roads, there are no residential areas because it abuts the railroad and it has Stratford Avenue and across from it a car wash. Traffic generated, however, light or heavy, will have an impact on the residents. Yes, they will have a map, but after a period of time, people are going to find their own little shortcuts and go through residential neighborhoods. 37 trips, 37 in, 37 out. That's a lot more. That's 37 more trips than what we have today. By the same token, there's exceptions that the city expectations that we as residents have to expect and that the city has to protect. Okay, it has to uphold its rules and regulations and see that the existing companies on Rayton Drive, as well as the residents in the immediately surrounded area, are not adversely affected by intrusions of their privacy, tranquility, which already exists. I know that I cannot speak for the companies in the area of Rayton Drive. I have two more sentences, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. I see that the special exception not go through for very many, varied number of reasons. I implore this board to be careful and take a look at this application, deny the application that is being presented to you this evening. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Again, if there's anyone else who would like to speak against this proposal, if you could come forward. Again, try to keep your comments 3 minutes.
Should be a lot shorter. I'm Dave Proskin. I live at 136 Harvest Lane. That's about, I don't know, a little over a half mile from this location. I'm probably pretty representative of the kind of guy that's going to visit breweries most of the time and generally would be in support of this kind of thing. A couple concerns I think they tried to address with traffic didn't really feel terribly addressed to me. I did a quick Google search, as most tech-savvy folks my age would probably do, on Google Maps and Apple Maps, and found that 4 of the 5 recommended routes would go directly through Plains Road. So setting up a website that I'm probably not going to find and probably not going to use and listen to when I go there, probably not going to alleviate a traffic concern there. The other thing is I have a 2-year-old son that I like to take for walks around the neighborhood, and he loves to just run around and be a happy little kid. And as the previous speaker just mentioned, 37 additional trips in and out is probably going to create an area where having a 2-year-old or 3-year-old son running around is probably not the best place, especially after they've had some beer. So I look forward to trying all the beer that these guys produce, but I generally am not really supportive of a beer garden and outside patio that they would be able to have big concerts and stuff like that at. So that would be what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against the proposal? Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Andrew Litowitz, and I live at 198 Cornfield Road. Thank you for the committee members for listening to both sides of the debate. I would like to offer the opening of brew pub with outside area does not comport with section 7.3.1 of Milford zoning codes, and that does not comport with the nature of the area in which they propose to open this facility. It is under the authority of sections 7.3.1 and 7.3.2 that allow the board to take into consideration that opening this facility does not fall within the nature of the community. Mr. Lynch stated that he has spoken with neighbors of the area. I will offer that I am a resident of Cornfield Road, and I have not been contacted for my thoughts. This outdoor beer area does not comport with the predominant character of the neighborhood, and so it is under the authority of the board to deny this application, and I urge you to do so. In regards to the food, Mr. Lynch has not addressed the fact, at least publicly here, that food trucks are powered by either the truck itself or portable generator, which can run at 10,000 watts or more, again disrupting the neighborhood with this noise running until 9 p.m. I submit that this again will not be in harmony with the area in which it is situated. Setting a direction, to echo the previous affiant, setting a direction scheme on a website does not satisfactorily address concerns that traffic flow will be alleviated. As we live in an ever-connected world, I submit that most people will need to use GPS to find this location. Directions on a website will not materially affect patrons from using Plains Road. I realize the applicants have spent quite a sum of money in purchasing and beginning to rehab the location. However, this should not be taken into consideration as to whether or not this special exception be approved here tonight. Special exceptions should take into consideration if said exception would serve such a greater public good that it would overrule existing zoning constraints. I submit that opening an outside beer garden does not satisfactorily overcome the public good litmus test for the risk and inconvenience that would be done to the residential neighborhood in which this facility will abut. However, that there is no particular reason why the applicant could not brew at Raton Street and offer their beverages at their own gathering place and location properly zoned for their garden and pub.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Marcia Duran, and I live at 64 Harvest Lane. I raised my family there for 26 years, and I would like to request that the board deny this special exception. We're talking about a neighborhood. You just heard my neighbor with his 2-year-old. He's up and down the street all the time. Our neighborhood already has many businesses nearby that bring extra traffic and noise. I know we have no noise ordinance, so we're stuck with it. We're stuck with the power plant. We're stuck with many businesses that make noise. I'll leave it at that. We have many children in our neighborhood who ride bikes, who walk with their families, and enjoy the neighborhood. I'm asking you to respect the families who live in this area. It's down the street. None of you live in our neighborhood that I know of. I would like you to think about the families who are there, the children who are out, all of us who walk our dogs who are out with our families. We do not need to add the potential for more noise, more traffic, and potential drunk drivers in our neighborhood that will disrupt our lives further. Please protect our families. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is James Ballas. Excuse me. I have lived at 106 Cornfield Road for 37 years. I've raised my family here. And I object to this application as special exemption. There are several concerns I have regarding the brewery in general, in addition to the special exemption for the public, for the patio and pub. One regards the air quality and or pollution. Commonly around breweries, the air around these breweries sometimes smell unpleasant. One source of odor can come from residual spent grain, leftovers from the brewing up process. If the brewery has it sitting outside and removed once a week, fermentation by wild yeast and bacteria can set into the pile. This can begin in a day or two. The smell can be revolting. My questions for this issue are, and I think they have addressed it, how many brews a week is the brewery planning on producing? Is some kind of system going to be in place to remove any odors, and what is their protocol for disposing of the byproduct? Next, the property on 100 Raton Drive has proposed 65 spaces, parking spaces. A 1,000 square foot patio could easily accommodate 70 to 100 patrons. If an additional 50 or so patrons are inside, staff, and 2 food trucks, this number could approach 150 plus people. Many restaurants, clubs, and bars go over their customer limit, sometimes very significantly, and enforcement is not very consistent. With that many patrons, there is the possibility of up to 100 cars or more looking for parking. Raton Drive is only one way in and one way out. This could be a traffic bottleneck. There would be increased pressure on Raton Drive with cars parking in the street and using facilities of adjoining businesses. Plains Road will also see an increase in traffic and noise. Furthermore, as patrons leave the premise late in the evening, as with what happens with many other establishments that serve alcohol into the evening, vehicles may create noise, disturbances through the streets with stereo, slamming doors, revving engines, beeping horns, and screeching tires. Dispersal of patrons also presents an increased risk of vandalism, public urination, disorderly and drunken behavior. Property lies adjacent to 100 residential homes on Haystack and Cornfield in Milford, Connecticut. Understandably, the increased use of the patio will probably correlate with warmer weather and light nights. However, these weather conditions are the most favorable for noise transmission. This will also coincide with the increased uses of nearby residential homes and the opening of windows. My worry is that the proposed patio from the evening into the early evening hours will mean patron noise will coincide with a drop in the background noise level at the site at the time when many residents will be home looking for quiet enjoyment of their homes and eventually retiring to sleep. It will be like your neighbor having a 4th of July party every evening of the week, all summer long. It will most likely be worse on weekends. Finally, noise issues include, but are not limited to, general hubbub due to the outdoors, to doors open, windows open, front and back, smokers who are going to congregate in the patio, speakers playing. They say they're not going to play music, but let's face it, business models change. Who is to say that, well, you know, let's extend the hours to 10 o'clock. How about putting a speaker outside? You know, patrons, hey, come on, put the music outside. Is there any enforcement of that? We don't have a noise ordinance in Milford. All the other towns around us, New Haven, Stratford, Orange, West Haven, Ansonia, Derby, all have noise ordinances, not Milford. So if I call the police department, there's nothing I can do, the police tell me, because we don't have a noise ordinance. The number of times I've called on the United Soccer, Milford Riders, any number of things, there's no noise ordinance, so the police won't come out. So, planning and zoning members, please protect our neighborhood. And in conclusion, I recommend refusal of the proposed brewery and special exemption. I understand that this is a contentious issue, but I consider the traffic and noise from patrons using this facility will cause a loss of amenity to nearby residents. I also have a petition that a lot of the neighbors have signed that I would like to present to the board.
You could give that to the board secretary, please. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak against the proposal? Good evening.
Good evening again. My name is Robin Moran. I live at 500 Plains Road, and I'm opposed to the patio and pub. As was mentioned before, one of the things that I'd like to comment on is that the brewery is located in a limited industrial zone. The P&Z board, when they were planning this area, however many years ago, they had, go back to my notes, had identified this as a limited industrial zone versus a industrial district, which they could have done. I grew up in that neighborhood. I was raised there since I was in 3rd grade. My parents moved away for a number of years, and I bought my house back there in, right on Plains Road in 2000. And I've seen a change, a significant change over the years. You know, I understand that the limited industrial zone, what it calls for, the board must have considered that when what they identified it as. But they would have considered that an industrial zone if they wanted the pub and patio to be considered as an eating, restaurants, that kind of amenity in that zone, but they didn't. With that being said, if, per the zoning regulations under a special exception, it states that the use shall be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the area which it's situated. We abut a residential neighborhood, that district abuts a residential neighborhood. And it states that vehicular traffic to and from the use will not be hazardous or inconvenient to the predominant character of the neighborhood. Well, right now, first I feel that, you know, the traffic increase, it will increase traffic. I read the traffic study. I've asked for a third-party review of that. It states that the traffic increase will be from 4 to 6, like a restaurant. However, as most people know, pubs, you know, people go on the weekends. The breweries, I have one of my neighbors will show you some, you know, pictures on that. They closed off the road back when they had an accident, I guess, on the railroad tracks years ago. I was actually living there at the time. And if you come out right now, and I know that Attorney Lynch had commented on this, you know, it's human nature. When you come out of Rattan, you take a left, you go up Plains Road, and it's windy. It's very windy. You travel up the street, and there's street lights. It's not the brightest, but there are lights. Shellen is the direction that everybody's saying that they'll take. It's pitch black. There's not one traffic light on that street. There's no street signs. How is anybody to know to go back that way? I drove right past it, and I know the streets. You don't even see it. So from somebody that's out of the area, people that have even live in Milford, how are they going to even know to turn on it? That's something that needs to be considered if they're going to, whatever the decision is here, I guess. I was a former real estate appraiser, and I do feel that putting this patio and pub is going to have a negative impact on the value of my home. I have done some research. I know in an urban city, where there's a lot of blighted old industrial factories, it does help. But where this is located, no. I mean, because it will produce traffic, people will know that it's there, and they're going to be concerned about their children. Luckily, my son is older. But there are other people out walking their dog. I mean, they're walking the dogs, the children, there's kids on bikes. I did call the police months ago about, the traffic, and they put a speed trap sign up in front. And the cars got up to the top of the hill as soon as they saw the sign, and then as soon as they passed it, they accelerated. So if people are driving and they're drinking, anything can happen. The tranquility of the neighborhood is going to change. The noise level will change. The patio lighting. I know you were talking about the parking lot. I was a building manager. What kind of lighting are you talking about in the back? Is that going to affect the neighbors in the back directly behind? How is that going to impact them? I mean, is it going to be bright lights? Will they see that directly in their backyard? How bright, Are the doors going to be left open with a noise, like that was mentioned? So there's all these things that need to be, I think, considered when you're deciding what you want to do. I think that you really need to consider, as mentioned, that, most of the people here, and I don't think any of the people that are with Tribus live in our neighborhood, in our immediate neighborhood, and they're not going to deal with this day in and day out. And we need to be, the immediate residents need to be considered here. Thank you for your time.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kim Andrade. I live at 161 Cornfield Road. I'm not going to repeat everything that was just said, but I support it and I endorse it. I've lived in the neighborhood for 14 years. I'm not opposed to a brewery, but I am opposed to it in our neighborhood. I think it's been mentioned before, but the elephant in the room here is impaired driving. We have a neighborhood where we don't have the street lights, we don't have the setting that the Stratford Two Roads Brewery has. Our neighborhood is in a darkened area when you drive down Plains Road, you go down to Cornfield Road. There aren't, there are street lights, but the area is not illuminated like Stratford Avenue is in Stratford. There's going to be traffic, regardless of what this plan is. The traffic that's going to be coming in from exit 36 or down West Rutland is not going to travel over to Bick Drive. It's just not realistic. People are going to use their navigation tool. They're going to use their MapQuest. They are not going to be going down to Bick Drive and take the long way to the brewery. It's just not going to happen. But most importantly, our neighborhood is a neighborhood of people that are walking. There is children playing out in the, out in the neighborhood. People are walking their pets, and there are going to be drivers that are going to be driving down to this place, this brewery or pub, whatever you might want to call it. Beer garden sounds really great, but they're going to be consuming alcohol, and that is a drug. And then they're going to be driving away after consuming that alcohol through our neighborhood. That is a recipe for disaster. And I submit that they should build it, but build it somewhere else where it belongs, not in our neighborhood.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jeannie Dubois. I have lived at the 116 Cornfield residence for 34 years. I have been a resident of Milford since I was 5, so you can tell I've spent a while. I was educated here. I have found that on Plains Road, the traffic has increased in the 34 years. The noise has increased in the 34 years. I have hearing loss as a result of the increased noise. I have also watched 18-wheelers go down Cornfield Road to the cul-de-sac, and because there's no place for them to turn around, they have had to back up. You cannot watch little children in an 18-wheeler truck backing down a windy hill that you have no vision, and there is a bus stop at the corner of my house. And sometimes it happens at the time that the children are coming home from school. I have a huge concern as a retired school nurse for the health and welfare of our children. I object to where the brewery will be. I also object to the fact that when I returned from a family call that I had to attend to, that I reached out to the brewery to ask them questions, and I was not given a response, even though they said they would, until last night when I said, I expect respect from you as I will give it to you if you deserve it. I am your neighbor. You are mine. Treat me with equal respect. Didn't get the answers. I saw pictures of where they were starting to build the inside of their brewery before they received approval. Does that make sense? Not to me. I wonder what's going on in our city. I am concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is George Hoppus, and I live at 550 Plains Road. My problem is with the traffic on Plains Road. Plains Road is in a residential area, and yet it seems to be the main hub to go carrying all the traffic to an industrial area. What I would like to see is the board recommend that the end of Plains Road be physically cut off so that traffic has to be redirected to Bick Drive, which is a much better road for commercial traffic. It's wider, the traffic is controlled by traffic lights instead of stop signs, and Schilling Road could be used to get into this industrial area, and it's not, no traffic would have to go through a residential area. So that's my
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, member of the board. Mike Bresnan, my wife Barbara, 499 Plains Road. We're both lifelong City of Milford residents for over 56 years. We purchased our home on Plains Road in 1984. We're going on 34 years. What is being presented here will be devastating to our neighborhood. We happen to be small business owners here in Milford also and support the small growth of business here in Milford. But this is no place for a pub. If this is the type of business Tribe has wanted to bring to Milford, all you need to do is drive up and down the Post Road, Route 1 corridor, and there are dozens of vacant buildings for sale, lease, not to mention raw land that would conform to what is being presented here without sticking it in our neighborhood. With this comes increased traffic, noise, impaired driving through our residential neighborhood. Everyone's going to the brewery for one reason, to drink beer. Today's craft beer craze is all about the IPAs, double IPAs. These beers are much stronger than your regular can of Budweiser. Drinking 2 of these is like drinking 4 cans of Bud. When it's time to leave, you'll be driving impaired through our residential neighborhood, where we have children playing, school buses, school bus stops, residents out walking, bike riding, and not to mention a daycare. Granting this special exception would be a huge injustice for the Plains Road and surrounding area residents. Why should we, the residents of a residential neighborhood, give up our right to a quality of life? Hundreds in the neighborhood suffer, so a handful can prosper. They chose us, we did not choose them. These zones were set up to protect us, just like you, the elected board members, are here to protect us. L1 was meant for light industrial, some office space, a warehouse, maybe a machine shop. These businesses would have minimal employees coming in at 7, leaving at 4 or 5 p.m. With Tribus's business model, we would have traffic on a continuous basis from noon past 9 p.m., with the weekends being their busiest time. Their busy time is our neighborhood's time to enjoy our quality of life, what we have and are still working for. It may not be much, but it's all we have, and to take it away would be detrimental to all in the neighborhood. We didn't even talk about the road. Part of Plains Road is one way. In my time living on Plains Road, I've encountered over a dozen cars coming the wrong way down the one way. Grinnell Street, which jogs around to put you back onto Plains, has no sidewalk, is just barely wide enough for 2 full-size pickup trucks to pass. Lower Plains also has no sidewalks. It's curvy, a banking road with blind spots. We have no through truck signs throughout the neighborhood and still have trucks. The neighborhood doesn't have a problem with a brewery. It's the selling of beer on site that will lead to impaired driving throughout our residential neighborhood. Like I said, from noon past 9 p.m., safety concerns for our children and residents, not to mention the effect it will have decreasing our home values. I know you probably know all the codes by name and all, but in the section 310.9, 5.9, it tells you to refer to 511. You go to 511, and that brings you back to, the 7.3 brings you back to 511. When you read the 511, it seems like it's dangerous, injurious, detrimental, objective. It's just bad for our neighborhood, and I hope to God you vote this down.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Bresnan, 499 Plains Road. The pictures that I had handed out were just pictures that we took in our neighborhood of people walking and how the street is windy when you come out of Raton and take a left onto Plains Road. That's our street. That's where our family lives. I've lived there for 34 years, and it's my life. And I have nothing against the brewery. You know, we go to breweries and we know that the crowds that they bring. When there's a selling of beer, in those pictures too, we went to Woodbridge. They had a selling of one of their beers. There's hundreds of people in line. That means hundreds of cars going past our house. This needs to be addressed. You can't do this to our neighborhood. I know our concern is the traffic and the noise, but I'm asking, is there any way that we can cul-de-sac our street? I know it's possible. You close the train tracks off, maybe open them up, I don't know, but we need to do more research on this to help us out. This is our neighborhood. You know, I've invested a lot of money into my home. I don't want it to deteriorate, you know, lose our well-being and everything. I want grandchildren to come to my house, to be able to play and not worry about cars or drunk drivers, you know, coming or going. And at night, it does get dark, and that is a windy road. I don't know if any of you have been out there, but take a ride out there. Take a ride on that road at night and in the daytime. Please. Thank you.
I forgot to mention, those pictures were taken from New England where they worked. That was taken on a Saturday morning at noontime. There was over 200 people in line. 600 cases of beer were sold between 11 and 3 p.m. with a 1-case limit per person. Just to give you an idea, that's why I believe the traffic study is biased. There's no model that you can put to gauge the amount of traffic we are going to have from this.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak against this proposal? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Pat Hoppus. I live at 550 Plains Road for 39 years. I have a problem with the brewery being there for a couple of reasons. First of all, Milford Writers, as you're all familiar with, is right on the corner of Rattan Drive. In the summer, or when it opens till it closes, Milford Fire Rescue is down there every single night they're open. Somebody gets hurt all the time. We've even had a death down there. So it's not a good place. And now to have a brewery next to that, what's stopping the people from Milford riders to go over, have a couple of beers, and come back and ride their bikes? There's nothing stopping them. Now we're going to have more problems. And, you know, we have people now riding up and down the street on their dirt bikes. Now if they had a drink or two, they're going to be crazy on these bikes. And a brewery right there is not a good place. We have enough problems with Milford riders. So the noise and everything is not good. And I'm not really in favor of having drunken people run around my neighborhood. I have enough beer cans on my lawn and cigarette boxes and all that kind of paraphernalia all around. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
How you doing? Jim Malico. We own the property on 579 Plains Road. I didn't know Plains Road was a substandardly built road. We've been there since '84. And the definition of a through truck road, you can't go through. Train tracks are closed. So I don't think that sign really belongs there anymore. It should be removed. As far as the cul-de-sac, that would really impact us. I know there was talks about doing it years ago. I don't know any of these people. I just got this flyer, my mailbox today. I am here to support it though. Any business is good, help for the tax base. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak against?
Question?
This is not a question and
Okay,
answer time. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak against? Yes, sir. That's fine.
My name is Ernest Dubois. I live at 116 Cornfield Road, Milford. I worked for the city of Milford for almost 38 years before my retirement on the fire department. The intersection there of Schelling Road and Plains, on race night, you can hardly get a car through there, never mind fire trucks or anything. I spent my last years in the repair shop. I used to go down there just to see, could we get a fire truck through there if one of those buildings went up? No way, because all the pickup trucks have trailers. They're racing. I don't know what else goes on. I don't have a problem with putting the brewery itself in, but when we moved in there, where we are, 34 years ago, the gas company decided they were going to liquefy gas. Sounds like a good idea. The only problem is when you run the motor that runs it to make the gas liquid, it sounded on our street like a jet engine from an airplane. Called the cops. They came down. What's that noise? Oh, that's the gas plant. The gas company had to spend over $1 million to fix it. A few years ago, Jimmy Beard gave the police department permission to build a SWAT place down there. On certain days when they come down and fire down there, live rounds, it sounds like World War III. I hear all this. We now have I guess it's a hockey rink down there, but without the ice. Sometimes at 1:30 in the morning, you hear the kids yelling, "Hey, we got the goal." This is supposed to be a residential place. And now you want to put a brewery in there that has an open deck. Now, I don't know the square footage of this room, but I'll bet that deck is going to be bigger than what this room is. How many people can you get in it? What are we going to have for light pollution? I make a recommendation that you people vote down the patio, and they want to build their beer, well, that's all right, but please look into the problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak against this proposal? All right, seeing none, Attorney Lynch, you have an opportunity to rebut.
Thank you, and I will. So before coming here tonight, we anticipated a lot of these comments. I tried to hit them head on or address them head on with comments that I made in my presentation relative to traffic. But replete throughout the comments from the neighbors seems to be the notion that they don't want this in their neighborhood. And I'm just reminding everybody, my clients are proposing something in an industrial zone. They're proposing something that is a manufacturing facility that conforms with the zone that they're in. And they're not opening up a restaurant. They're not opening up a large-scale bar. They want to have a tasting room in conjunction, and I use that word right at the outset of my presentation to you. They want to have a tasting room in conjunction with their brewery, and that is standard with every brewery across the state of Connecticut. And, you know, the neighbors who live on Cornfield Road, the neighbors who live on Harvest Lane, both of those streets are dead-end streets. They're cul-de-sacs. So I really question, and it sort of belies you know, any sense of common sense as to traffic emanating from my client's use of their building going onto those two streets. Who's going to go down Plains Road and then just drive down a dead-end street? I don't think it's going to happen. And I submit to you that it won't happen. And we proposed a traffic pattern, and we proposed it through our website, and I know one of the speakers talked about GPS and whatnot. You know, my clients can maybe even address it in their literature or their social media literature that directs traffic, again, as I mentioned from the outset, out onto Bick Drive to try to eliminate the impact of traffic on Plains Road. But, you know, the bottom line here is when you buy a house that's within close proximity to a industrial zone, your expectations, and I think the first speaker talked about tranquility. When you buy a house,
if I could just ask the audience to please not make comments. Thank you.
And I mean no disrespect. I'm saying this as a fact that.
Excuse me. We want to keep this civil. I understand that these are, you know, the issues mean a lot to everybody, but let everyone please have their say. Thank you.
The point that I want to make, and I'll say it for the third time, is that when you buy a house in close proximity to an industrial zone, your expectations of tranquility, as the first speaker talked about, your expectations of tranquility are diminished, and that's a fact of life. And what my clients are proposing here is a manufacturing facility for making craft beer and having a tasting room. And we came to you tonight with a traffic expert, uncontroverted by any other expert. We put into the record expert testimony from a traffic expert that the traffic from this facility will have a minimal impact on the neighborhood. And the first speaker as well, to be honest with you, I thought it was sort of creepy. Pictures of, you know, they went to my client's place of business and took pictures of the New England Brewery. That has no relevance to this application. And the beer output at the New England Brewery is some 7 times the output that my clients are proposing. So having pictures of whatever goes on at New England Brewery and lines of people taking, you know, buying beer, that really has no relevance to what my clients are doing. They're doing a small scale operation here with a tasting room, and that's it. And, you know, these plans and these comments that I've made to you, they speak for themselves. They want to bring their business to Milford, start their business in Milford. They want to be part of the Milford business community, and they feel, and I feel, that they will have a very minimal impact on the neighborhood. We did a GPS measurement of the closest residence to the brewery, and it's some 700 feet away, okay, on Cornfield Road, 700 feet. So I submit to you that this is a reasonable request, again, in conjunction with the brewery. The brewery itself is a permitted use. The tasting room and the patio is what we're before you tonight, and I think it's a reasonable request, and I ask that you grant the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Lynch. We now have the opportunity for the public to speak again or to rebut what Attorney Lynch has said. So I would ask first for those in favor of the proposal if you would like to comment, but please keep your comments to address anything new that has been said by Attorney Lynch. So again, in favor. Excuse me? If you could approach the podium, please. Good evening.
Hello. My name is Lori Melius. I'm at 61 Nob Hill Road in Milford. And I just want to say that I know the group of men that are trying to put this together. They're a great group of guys. They have all respect for everyone in the neighborhood and everyone in the town of Milford. They live in Milford, and they make their homes there and raise their families here. They're very concerned with children in the area and things like that. They're going to do everything they can to make this as safe as possible, and they're very responsible. And I vote for it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Eaton. I'm 82 Loomis in Milford. I know these three gentlemen as well. They are extremely responsible men. I have two children. I have gone to breweries with my children, and they are safe places. It's not loud and rowdy. People go to have a good time, to be together as a community, they're gonna bring good business to Milford. I'm a small business owner in Milford as well, so I support it. I don't think anything, I vote for them, so.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak in favor? Good evening.
Mike Graniff, 25 Knollwood Road here in Milford. I just want to voice my opinion on this as well, and I believe this is great for Milford. Working in the craft beer industry myself, it's a booming industry. It's going to bring tourism as well as money into Milford. And also, just to touch on the impaired driving aspect of it, it's an industry standard that all servers in bars and or breweries are trained to recognize impaired people and cut them off, or cut them off before they get to that point. Granted, I know it doesn't work all the time. However, it is an industry standard, and I'm sure these guys will, maintain that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
My name's Megan Glynn. I live at 26 Deer Run Trail. It's very close to the brewery as well. And I have a daughter who's on a bus that travels in that loop down Shell and up Plains Road. I do not believe this is putting her in any unsafe conditions, and I believe this is a great thing for Milford, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
Hi, my name's Deb Warwick. I live on Westport Place in Milford, and I've known these guys for years. Matt was in Meeting House Lane. He grew up with my children. And from what I've heard and what I've seen, I think the fact that they're going to give back to the community and economic growth, I think it's a great thing. I support it.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll open it up to anyone opposed. But again, if we could keep it limited to comments that were made by Attorney Lynch. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll address my comments to Attorney Lynch regarding...
Excuse me.
My name is Jim Ballas.
No, you need to address all your comments to the board, not to
Okay.
Attorney Lynch.
My comment is the comment that was made regarding you buy your house near an industrial zone, you live with the consequences. They want to build a brewery, and it falls within those guidelines of a light industrial, then so be it. But they want a special exemption. That's denied. No patio, no 1,000-square-foot patio with 100 people and cars. That's what we're talking about. That's the crux of this argument, is that patio. Okay, they want a special exemption. That means the law says this is what you can do in a light industrial area. But I want to have a special exemption that says I can do something that is not allowed. So a patio is not allowed. Okay, so that's the argument. We don't want the patio and what it brings with it.
Mr. Chairman, this time I promise to be very brief, because I can only address what Attorney Lynch brought up. I'm sure these gentlemen are great guys, and that's not the issue here. Traffic, every car added is a negative impact to any neighborhood, no matter what. If it's one car or a dozen cars or 100 cars, it doesn't matter. It's still a negative impact. I say yes to the brewery, but not the deck and not the tasting room. Okay? As far as dead ends and cul-de-sacs, Cornfield, yes, almost a quarter mile up the road comes to a cul-de-sac. He's absolutely correct. But what about Haystack Road, which loops around, which is directly behind Rayton Drive? We as residents of Haystack and Cornfield moved in. We knew that the dirt track was there. We knew that the soccer arena was there. And once moving in, the interpretation by law is we accept their existence. By the same token, there's an exception that the city should protect what is currently existing in the area, and that the board will uphold its rules and regulations to see that the residents and existing companies on Rayton Drive, Haystack Road, and Cornfield, and the residents in the immediate surrounding area are not adversely affected by any intrusions of their privacy and, again, tranquility, which already exists there today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make one more comment to what the attorney said earlier.
Excuse me, if you could just state your name again,
I'm
please.
sorry, Kim Andrade. I live at 161 Cornfield Road. I do live on a dead-end street. I access my road from Plains Road. Plains Road is a road that's going to lead to this brewery, and that's what I'm concerned about. Less concerned about the drivers driving down Cornfield Road, but I am concerned about Plains Road. It's dark, it's windy, it's not a place for impaired drivers to be traveling. And the other thing I want to mention is that we built a property down on Plains Road to build our home, we understood there was an industrial area behind there, and we have accepted that, but we did not buy that property or build our home so that we can be next to a brewery so that we can be subjected to impaired drivers on a daily basis. And I just want to say one last thing about, I think somebody commented about bartenders and servers are supposed to be, you know, mindful and not serve people that are intoxicated. They have to be visibly intoxicated. There's a standard, okay? And buzz driving, or a person that is buzzed is not something that's going to be necessarily cut off. And buzz driving is drunk driving, and they're going to be driving through our neighborhood.
Thank you. Good evening.
Robin Moran, 500 Plains Road. When he had mentioned about, driving impaired, you're driving down a street, you're drinking, or not even drinking, you turn down the wrong street. It happens. You end up on a dead-end street. I mean, you can easily turn down Cornfield, Haystack, Benjamin Heights, through Bennyville, any of these roads, even though I live on Plains Road. I mean, it's easily, and he's saying it can't happen. It can happen. That's one issue. He commented about purchasing our homes. 2 houses away from mine, there are 2 signs that say no commercial traffic. I brought that up with the police. Between my house and West Rutland, there are 4 signs that say no commercial traffic. There's commercial traffic. So when I bought my house, I was under the assumption no commercial traffic. And so there is, you said that, I wasn't a knowledgeable buyer. I was, and it's still there. So, I do think that's an issue. It's a light industrial zone. It's not an industrial zone. That's another issue. And they're going to be selling cans of beer. People are going to be going to that site to pick up beer during the day, to take home, to consume. They're not just going to be consuming it on premises. Something else to consider, which was told to us initially when we were out in the lobby that night, that they will only be drinking it on premises. That's another factor. So it has to be also considered.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Good evening.
My name is Gary Hoppus. I live at 75 Cornfield Road. I've been there since 1978. The road was a dirt road when I moved into my house. There were laws, your zoning regulations are geared to protect the people. These people are asking for an exception to those rules. I would ask you to deny the exception. The brewery is fine. We don't need the imbibing of alcohol. And if you were to allow this, where does that end? Where does that exception end with Tribus Brewing? Or can anybody else go in and then piggyback off of that exception and just put bars everywhere along the neighborhood street? I just wish you wouldn't approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Mike Bresnan, 499 Plains Road. I kind of resent the comment from Mr. Lynch about saying, we moved into our homes and we know what we're buying into. When me and my wife were looking for our home, we got a call from our real estate agent saying this house was on the market. The fellow had a tragic accident on the Merritt Parkway, was killed instantly. I knew the whole area from, like I said, I've been in Milford for 56 years. We actually sat on the side of Plains Road. We were working at the time, but the times we could to see what the traffic flow was like because I knew the area. We bought into what we did. We knew the dirt track was there. We knew it was there. Like everyone else said, it's light industrial. Have your brewery, make your beer, keg it, can it, ship it out. We have no problem with that. It's the rest of it. This big tasting room, that's a play on words. You don't go there and have 2 ounces of a beer that doesn't work like that. As you know as well as I do, you go there 3, 4. On their website, they're putting in TVs, they're putting in games. They want you to stay. It's not run in, have 4 ounces of beer, or run out. It's not a tasting thing like that. And again, the traffic study. There is nothing to compare it to. He's comparing it to a restaurant or something. It's not even to a brewery. There's nothing to compare it to. So please, I beg you to turn this down.
Thank you. Anyone else against?
Good evening. My name is Ellen Russell Beatty. I'm on the serving my second term on as on the Board of Alders for the 1st District, so I represent this district. So there isn't anything left to be said. The 80 signatures on the petition speak for itself. People are concerned, whether realistically or not, and they've expressed those concerns. But I'm sitting in the audience, and I would like to have the opportunity to say that I heard some very genuine concerns from the residents when I walked around. And it was in this campaign that I walked around Harvest Lane, Cornfield Lane, Haystack, and there are concerns about the entranceway to the brewery. I'm not going to stand here and say I'm against the brewery. It's like being against motherhood and apple pie. I understand that it is everybody's dream to bring a brewery into the town. Vermont is turning little towns around. They have the vats up as public open spaces to watch the distillation process and encourage people. I understand all that. But this is asking for an exception. And there's a little bit of condescension in the tone that to be objecting to an exemption is being selfish, etc. It is a residential area. What I promised the residents that I would do tonight would be to amplify the concerns that I thought were significant and appropriate, and not just taking a side. And I wanted to address the traffic concerns. So I spoke with a couple of residents and said, why don't you work with the traffic consultant for the developer to see if there's a way that you could use traffic bollards or something to direct the traffic, the commercial traffic, back out to Bick Lane, to Subway, because that is an area that can handle the commercial traffic. So I feel a little bit naive that I thought that was really an interest in doing that. So yes, we're not here tonight to discuss the pros and cons of a brewery. I'm for smart development. I would like to see a Whole Foods in the 1st District. I'm against suburban sprawl much more than I am against small economic development. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a particular area where a developer is asking for an exemption, which would be a courtesy and a privilege, because the residents are very concerned. They said, we have no power, we have no voice, our petition doesn't matter, we are a residential area. I drove up there, I read the proposal, I talked to the residents, I studied it, I contacted the city attorney, I talked to the previous head of the Planning and Zoning Board to see what's what. I don't have my head in the ground. I think that there are ways to modify this, to recognize genuine concerns and not laugh at one another, and try and have a brewery with a way to make it palatable for the area. And I think I was in Ireland this summer, and Ireland is trying to take American money and use it to develop. They want that, but they want to keep their small villages. So they're developing circles, so the big trucks that deliver to some of the stores go around the villages. Keep the villages, keep the red brick, you have the bollards there. That's legitimate. Let's not laugh at one another and know that they are asking for something from us. And my name should not be mud, nor theirs, if we say, consider it a little. Thank you very much. I wish you good luck.
Good evening.
My name is Robert Andel. I live at 84 Cornfield Road, and I'd just like to add my name to the list of those who could support the brewery, but not the tasting room or the patio. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, Attorney Lynch, you have one final say at this. I think you can rebut the rebuttal. Is that correct, Mr. Solkis?
That's correct. I would just like to close with the comment directed towards the thought that intoxicated drivers are going to be rampant leaving this facility. I think that's disingenuous. I think my clients are going to be receiving a permit from the state of Connecticut, and one of the responsibilities of being a permitted facility is to make sure that intoxicated people are not served. So I think that this notion that you know, people will be leaving the site here and creating a public safety situation really is not the case. And I'd also like to remind the board and everybody here that, you know, there are other instances of licensed liquor facilities in residential zones. I mean, when Great River Golf Course was developed back in the late 90s, Monty's Restaurant is smack dab in the middle of the Great River housing development. Scribner's Restaurant has existed here in Milford for some 45 years. It's located right in the village of Woodmont, and I don't think that people in the village of Woodmont are fearful of people leaving Scribner's and creating a public safety hazard as they leave that facility. These are full liquor licensed establishments. So again, I think I wanted to close by just addressing those concerns and again re-emphasizing that the application before you is not a special exemption, it's a special exception. And under our zoning regulations, that's where a use cannot be pigeonholed into a specific definition. It's not a permitted use and it's not a prohibited use. So what we're asking for is for you to use your common sense. We're not asking for an exception or a variance. That's a whole different can of worms. All right, going before the Zoning Board of Appeals and asking for a variance creates a different situation. You want to do something that's in derogation of the zoning regulations. That's not what this application for the tasting room and the patio is for. It's not a special exemption, it's a special exception. We're asking you to recognize this as a use in conjunction with the brewery that doesn't meet any specific definition in the zoning regulations. So that's got to be clear, and I hope that you consider that through your consideration of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sulkus, we have the public has one more opportunity to respond, or no? We're done. Okay. Let me ask, is there any other questions from the board? Yes, Mr. Dolan.
I just have a quick question for Attorney Lynch, or maybe the applicant. Are you guys, if it's approved, are you guys planning on having dram shop insurance? Yes, we are. Up to the max, I think, in Connecticut, $250,000? Okay.
Are there other questions from the board? Yes, Mr.
My question is for the applicant. How are you planning to handle or police the subject of children or kids in the facility?
Hi, I'm Matt Weichner. I actually live at 72 Sunset Ave in Milford, lived in Milford all of my life. We are going to allow children and pets. That's like that creates the different atmosphere from a bar or a nightclub that where you can have someone that just the family can come and relax, hang out, bring their own food. They don't have to take food off the food truck or anything like that, and just come in and just be a part of a community. So.
Other questions? All right, seeing none, if there's no objection from the board, I think that we close the public hearing on this. So the public hearing on this matter will be closed. And I know we're getting to that point, 11 o'clock, so do we want to postpone action on this to the next meeting? Agreement, consensus on that? Okay. We'll take up the matter at the next meeting. Thank you. Man. All right, we still have just a couple, excuse me. Excuse me. we still have a few items that the board needs to deal with, so I just would ask if you have conversations, if you could take them outside, please. Thank you. Okay, item under chair report. What I did was Mr. Solkis and I met before the meeting, and we went over a lot line adjustment for 80 Surf Ave. It was basically 3 parcels on one piece that were separated into 2 conforming parcels. So that's just for everyone to know that that's what we did. Liaison reports? None. Regulation Subcommittee, Mr. Grant?
None at this time.
Okay. I'd accept a motion for approval of minutes.
I have a correction to the minutes.
Oh, excuse me.
And the very last page. Okay. In the last page of the minutes, the last line, it states that the traffic study is going to be on the 21st of December meeting. Actually, our meeting is on the 19th. So it needs to change from the 21st to the 19th.
All right, the minutes have been corrected. Is there a motion to accept the minutes? Mr. Dolan.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second, Mr. Moore. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Staff report.
None this evening.
All right, I'd like a motion for adjournment. Second, all in favor? All right, thank you, everyone.